and McCann.
Greetings. Welcome to Wake the Dead. Today we are very happy to have returning guest, Dr. Ammon Hillman. Welcome, Ammon.
Thank you so much, Sean, for having me back. I can't wait.
Me too. I am very delighted. The last discussion that we had was infinitely interesting, and it made me want to talk more. So I'm very glad that you could join us here today. Thank you.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for the invite.
Awesome. Yes, on the last show, we in the title, well, not in the title, but in the show notes, I kind of told people this is for advanced listeners, and I kind of warned people about because there were a lot of triggering words and things, ideas for some people. And I'm very glad to say that I got almost no negative. I got a couple, but almost no negative comments. And I'm very proud of my listeners for being so evolved in their understanding, where they can accept new information from new sources and understand and not be triggered and want to fight you down. So just wanted to say that. Thank you, listeners, for listening. And we hope that you enjoy this continuation of our discussion today. Today we will be discussing Medea and her influence on today's culture, and maybe dig into the finer details of what you, Ammon, find to be most relevant and interesting about the story of Medea. And I'm very excited to get started here. So tell us, Ammon, who is Medea?
Medea is the unheralded genius of the Bronze Age who catapulted humanity forward by researching drugs in the form of dotes and antidotes. She not only developed all of the drug knowledge, but she also created a system of religion that you and I today would call the mystery, right? Bacchic worship goes back to this queen. Who is she? Historically, she's a queen. She is a queen of what you would call the lands ruled by the Scythians, and countryside that's full of Amazonian women. And people say, Amazonians? I thought I was talking about myth. No, this is history. We're talking about people who were buried in graveyards, right? The Athenians had a real problem with the Amazonians. You got to understand, these horseback poison arrow using cultures, they gave Athens a hard time. Ultimately, Athens employed them as their police force, right? Imagine this, the world's first democracy, the place where we worship the Virgin. We employ a police force of Scythians. Why? Because they've got those technological advantages that can keep us civilized. And one of the technological advantages was the poison, right? This is the same culture that created the Medusa. And they're working off of a knowledge base that Medea is pushing forward like a great scientist. And she's so popular at the time. Not only is she queen of the Scythians, but she's also queen of Babylon, right? And her influence goes all the way over into Italy. They've got temples set up to her as Angitia, right? The snake goddess. They've got temples to her because she knows all the cures, right? And she's got family. She's got Bronze Age family over there, right? Remember when Odysseus is wandering? He's wandering for those 10 years. He goes from one Bronze Age queen to another, right? One of them, who's a relative of Medea's, she poisons his men and poisons him, and then he's like, don't cut my nuts off, because castrate, I should say. Let's keep this clinical. Castrate, right? He doesn't want her to castrate him, because that's one thing they're doing. That's one thing they're doing, is performing those castrations. So why? Because, what do you do if you're a middle-aged bronze age woman, and you've got some needs that need to be filled and satisfied? And Odysseus, he's a looker. You know what I mean? You can castrate someone and turn them into a sex slave. You'll never get pregnant from that, right? She doesn't castrate him, and she does end up getting pregnant. She haunts him later in life. People don't know it, right? There's two levels, Sean. There's the myth that we all read, and we get myth 101 in college, that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Read some book, general myth book by Barry Powell or something like that. He's a good guy, by the way. There's that level. And then there's the level of John Tzitzis, who's a Byzantine scholar writing in ancient Greek. And he says, hey, Lycophron is telling us, Lycophron's an old Hellenistic genius, just the most difficult Greek on the planet is in this ancient work that is the prophecy of Cassandra. Right. It's her prophecy. And John Tzitzis is trying to explain what it all means. Long story short, he talks about Circe. She chases down Odysseus when he gets back home and puts him to death and raises him in good mystery fashion. Death and resurrection. Here he comes. You got to go through this stuff. If you haven't been through it, you don't have a perspective of what life is. That's what Cicero says. Cicero says that. These are the mysteries that Medea begins, that she starts. She takes that Bronze Age technology, right? And she develops it and pushes it to a place that their communion drug is explosive. Right, it's just, and she goes
in
around
popularity, explosive in popularity, right?
No, I mean really explosive. Yeah.
Oh, in it, okay.
They call it Medea's fire, right? And they take it and develop it into a drug that the Navy uses, right? Because you can't put it out with water; it's like napalm. Right. So she's the one who comes up with a concoction. She's doing stuff with fire that people are like, what? They're coming from all over the West. They're coming from the West to observe her with what she does. Right. This is how popular she is in her own day. And she's so influential that an entire tribe of people called the Aryans, right? I'm sorry, but that's the Greek name for them, right? The Aryans. They're one of these Scythian tribes. They're one of these peoples that are living there in that horse culture world. And what do? They say, we're going to change our identity to followers of the Medea, right? And so they call themselves Medes. Every time you talk about the Medes, you're talking about a people who at one time decided their identity was due to this one queen, right? Wow. This one very famous queen.
So she's so influential that she changed the technology level of pretty much all of the world at the time, of Europe and the Mediterranean, and cultures. They revered her warriors. They took her philosophy and her medicine as like their identity. And she was remembered in the myths as well as being a historical person, right?
She's remembered in the historians as being a real person. Right. Herodotus starts out his entire history with her, right? She's one of those. Now you know why they abducted her, right? Why she became a hostage of the Greeks, because her knowledge was so great. what she was doing was she was pushing forward not just a society, but a religion that could drive the oracular system. Remember, in ancient Greece, if you want to send a colony out, you have to go see an oracle, right? Medea is Oracle Prime. She's the one who Pindar, very famous Greek, right? Lyric poet, very famous. Pindar writes for us, he preserves her oracle that the priestess at Delphi delivered to one of the people, right? She is sitting on Thera, the island that now blew up, right? Since then it blew up, and people are like, oh, is this what started the Dark Ages, right? In Greece, is this what started that geometric period where all the pottery goes to hell and looks like garbage? Yeah. She was there before the explosion of Thera, the island, volcano, boom.
Right.
She was there before that, giving oracles. And so her influence is being spread, not just through the religion, because remember, she is the first Christ. In all of our Greek literature, she's the first person who's referenced, and this is in Diodorus Siculus, right? Diodorus Siculus. And he says she's the first person. Not only does it say she invented the fumigation, she was also big into hair dye, right? Everybody traces back the history of hair dyeing to her. Well, okay, whatever. It's just another aspect of her genius, but you can see it's all centered around this kind of pharmacological, they're having a pharmacological renaissance in the late Bronze Age. That's all there is to it. Right. And she's she's writing and perpetuating this edge. Also working with antidotes and all that kind of stuff for venoms. There's lots of problems with the envenomation, but the cults, the Bacchic cult that she perpetuates is a Christing cult. And she is the first one who is referred to as the one who is the Christ. And you say, what is Christing? Well, if you look at the medical texts that we have and all of the pharmacological stuff that the priests are talking about and writing about, you see in there that Christing is a term that's used. It's just one type of application of a drug. And it's so popular that Christing shows up in Aeschylus's Prometheus, right? I was just working with a student who were reading Aeschylus's Prometheus, and the number of times that Christing comes up is phenomenal. And Prometheus, it's all set within the environment. Prometheus is saying, look, I gave you drugs. I gave drugs and drug knowledge to humans. And he says, I've gave him this knowledge, the Christing, I gave him the potables. And he lists several different types of drugs. And Christing is one of them. You see it all the time in eyes. They like to do this in the eyes. People don't understand that ancient medicine is vastly different from modern medicine, right? And you're doing things like, spitting in the eyes of your patients, you're drinking urine, you're tasting body fluids and stuff like that. So it's not odd for us to take a medicine and, put it on the outside of an alabastron or a vitreum priapeum, which is the Baptist, the cup, the glass dildo is what it translates to. The glass dildo that the Baptists use for the sacred sodomy. Same thing. You put the drug on the outside of the cup. If you don't believe me, go to Juvenal. You put the drug on the outside and you apply it rectally, right? Rectal administration of a drug should not be surprising. They also have the pastille. They're like little tablets. They
dissolve or whatever.
Dissolve in wine. You can put them. You can just put it into the vagina. They do a lot of that. They use it as a suppository, but also as a vaginal suppository. So you see them a lot in women's medicine. Yeah.
So that's what the burning purple was? That So is it it makes an excretion from the vaginal, it's like purple and it stings the fingers. Is that what you're, we were talking about that briefly in the other episode.
Yeah, Medea's behind that, right? And she's actually depicted by a very famous Roman who guards, he's one of the guardians of the Sibylline books, not the Sibylline oracles, those are all over the place, the Sibylline books. And he talks about Medea as taking a drug from her vagina and putting it on Jason, right? And it describes her as
Jason and the Argonauts, Jason.
Yeah, Iason, right? Iason, which is a cult name, right? You thought Jesus was Hebrew, right? No, it's not. Right. It's cult terminology, right? Why do you think the Magi showed up and did what they did with giving him the drugs and the money, right? Okay, so anywho, yeah, Medea is behind the production of these substances, and one of them is her own communion. And there's a beautiful scene in Diodorus Siculus where she makes an image, an eidolon. She fills it with drugs, and it says it's the best ones, right? That she knows she has all them. She knows more than the Thessalians do, because everybody knows the Thessalians are huge into drugs. And why is Thessaly big into drugs? Because they're descendants of the Pelasgians, that very horse culture that propagated the Kentauroi, the centaurs. What is a centaur? A centaur is a dude who drugs young kids and teaches them. Yeah, that's what a centaur is. And they've got all the most potent, especially the arrow poisons, right? It's always going back to these arrow poisons that they use. Right. So, yeah, Medea is behind all of this. And I'll stop, but her name means, it's the root that we use for medicine, right? Over in Latin, the medeor it doesn't mean to be a doctor or to practice as a physician. Medeor means to apply drugs. Right, to apply drugs. So there's a big technology. Look, you missed out, world. There's a connection between drugs and the performance of religion. And if you don't understand that, you've never been in a true mystery. You're only living in what is the reflection of the reality, right? If there's not something in that wine that puts you into the death state, if there's not some sort of body that you can ingest that will bring you back, you haven't been into a mystery. Right. So she's the one who propagates, invents, if you will. She's the first Christ. And it's too bad that her genius, they used her fire later to, burn down navies, and we're very successful with it. But this technology is being filtered through these horse cultures. So it stains, the fact that these horse cultures are the way they are, it kind of stains everything. And you can see it just with, I'll say one last thing, the baths. You talk about the baths. When you wake up in the morning, you get a cannabis bath, right?
Me too. Yeah.
Oh, so you're doing the Scythian thing. I see.
Right. I like the jovial discussion. Right? Yeah.
Good. What else did you want to ask? Because I'd rather this be a discussion than me just.
Well, yeah. This is intensely fascinating. So the technology of the horse cultures, not only did they have the warring technology of, like, the medicines were used for war. You mentioned in the other episode that you could, with one arrow, you don't even have to kill the guy. You hit him with one arrow that has this poison, and it makes the dude go crazy, and it takes 3 other people to hold him down. So this is like a ingenious device for the battlefield, because with one arrow you can take out 4 people that are fighting you. And so this technology was obviously adopted because of its superior abilities. And so that swept through, and not only even now, like, all of the technology that's really being pushed is pushed by war. Like we got DARPA, I mean, the internet, is created by these war institutions that are developing new ways to dominate and control, and being able to hijack someone's body and make them go crazy and make them want to cut off their genitals and whatever, like that is infinitely useful to a dominating empire. So I'm sure the Greeks took this, and then with the Romans went even further with it, and then the Roman Catholic Church went and occulted all this information to and so on. So it makes sense that this type of knowledge is propagated throughout the ancient history. And it also makes sense that, I mean, like the real temple of our spirit is our body, and to affect that is the direct route for communing with spirit. If you're gonna achieve those levels of consciousness, you need to change the body in some way, and our bodies have this potential, and it only makes sense that, with the combination of 17 different snake venoms and whatever, milk from a child that has scaly skin, or whatever they could concoct to create, would unlock keys in the body to attain higher levels of technology, I guess. It makes a lot of sense, and it also makes sense that this type of technology would be occulted and kept from us and used against us.
Remember, it's medicine that allows you to open up in a way that you would not normally open up. Right. It's a psychological. They talk about the treatment of depression. You know how you treat depression in antiquity? You get a priestess to drug you, tie you up, and forcefully sodomize you. And somehow this treats your depression. I don't know.
Somehow, all of a sudden, you're not worried about how my life sucks. I want to get away from these people. Yeah, that would definitely take my mind off of it. Be like, whoa, yeah. So
they do guard though.
So like that, but that is like a pushing the conscious, just the torture factor, even without any drugs. The levels of torture, pushing the consciousness to that extreme, brings about these. Like the same thing with satanic ritual abuse, or even adrenaline. If you're getting chased by a lion, your body reacts in certain ways that are understood by these doctors, right? The doctor says, well, if we hold them down and molest them with a alabastron, then maybe it'll do something to their brain. I don't know. They have a science.
You're gonna bring that person to the orgasmon, right? That's the place. Orgy. The ancient word for religion is orgy, right? There's a reason for that. If you take the individual to that peak in the process of treating them mentally, you can ingrain healing in that individual. They didn't say in the brain, they said in that individual.
Well, right? That goes to show how regular sex between a man and wife is healing and beneficial. It's good, it's natural. We were created to have these releasing of fluids, and whatever. Exchange of fluids,
you if you're constipated, you would go get something to make you be not constipated, right? Imagine this is women should have this now. Once a year in Cyprus, when they celebrated Adonis, every wife, every married woman was expected to do one of two things. You could celebrate this holiday in one of two ways. You could shave your head in mourning for Adonis, or you could go to the temple where people would be lined up, and you could pick up pick out a dude and celebrate Aphrodite with that dude for the evening. The next day, show back up at home. Everything is perfect. Why? Because you've just served Aphrodite. Think about what would keep somebody more sane in a relationship. Now, you can't do this if you're a man. But if you're a woman, remember, these cultures are coming from the Bronze Age when female power is supreme.
Right.
And you talk about the Lord of Lords, it's a she.
Right.
Yeah, imagine that. The Lord of Lords is a she. Right.
Well,
so
yeah. I mean, the female body is the conduit for spirit to come into the flesh. I mean, like that's the men just have to watch, like we just watch in awe.
Yeah.
Right.
And when your society figures out you can just take a man and you can unman him, you know what I mean? And then just use him as a device. These women in these tribes, they're hunting their husbands, right? Because that's what you do. Man, you can't get one until you've killed 3 men, right? This is a female-centric Bronze Age development. And so that's the kind of rationale. That's why Odysseus is crying everywhere. Haven't you noticed? He's being held captive by different women crying, right? He's sitting on the beach crying. Odysseus crying. Why does he cry so much, right? Well, I don't know. If you were trafficked, I guess you would cry too. Right. But within the rite itself, within the religion that's driving all this, is the continuous, use of these pharmaceuticals. And Hermes gives Odysseus a drug to counteract the drug that he's about to be drugged with by the sex lady, right? So if you're listening to this, and one great source from antiquity. It's his, Eustathius says he's talking to historians, and he's a church source. He's talking to historians, and they are writing about the earliest of the Greek history. And they're saying Greek history was known to have developed from the activity of the laestes. It was very laistic. And what you say, what is that laestes? That's the person who traffics, right? You traffic humanity, right? And they were trafficking young prostitutes, right? This is where the Greek system, didn't you wonder why Herodotus said all our history begins with the abduction of these 4 girls, right? Didn't you wonder about that, right? These, this Bronze Age culture is functioning within a world where the Greek mind is slowly being laid down, right? And sometimes the Greeks are saying, the Greeks are saying, these are Eastern ways, not those Ionians. Those Ionians are exposed to the worship of the Great Mother. They know what it means to cut off your testicles for the Great Mother, right? That's a thing. So you have to understand the environment that these people are living in is perpetuating this female dominant culture, right? Agamemnon got killed by his wife. Did you ever wonder that? You think of the Iliad and you think, what? Right? You know what Achilles says? Achilles says Helen standing on the walls of Troy is Medea, and that she's been sending her image into his, he doesn't say brain, he says into his mind while he sleeps.
Right. So this is the same as Cibil. She was from the Phrygia, which is like Eastern, like Turkey area. So that is the East. And she made Attis go crazy by sending images into his mind, and that craziness caused him to remove his genitalia completely, go into an ecstatic state. And the priests of the Cibil cult would all do the same as Attis. They would remove everything. There'd be nummos, and they'd dress like a woman to maybe usurp the power of that woman, like to try. It was maybe as an ancient way of the patriarchy trying to take control, like dressing up like one.
No. It wasn't an attempt to overthrow.
It was a reverence.
It was no, it was an attempt to transform into her form, right? You got to remember the great Phrygian mother, they call her Agdistis. And in the form of Agdistis, she is a self-castrating hermaphrodite.
Right.
Right.
And Attis is the son of Agdistis, right?
Yeah.
And Agdistis came from Cibil, who...
And they have a relationship, right? The two have a relationship.
Right.
Okay. Do you know why they call the centaurs pederasts? Because this process, this maturation and sexual switching is a whole part of the cult. Catullus, think how forward this is. Today, you and I were talking about pronouns and talking about gender switching, and we're all like, freaked out about it, right?
Yeah.
Catullus, he's a 1st century BC Roman poet. And he writes a poem. It's number 63 in his collection. He writes a poem about Attis. He takes it from the viewpoint of somebody who went through the process and wakes up the next morning and is regretful, right? He writes the poem that way. And in the poem, he switches from he. The kid is a he to start with. And as we progress through, the he changes to a she. They have no problem with pronouns in Rome. The Romans imported this worship from the East when they were having a hard time with Hannibal, right? Hannibal's kicking their asses. He wasn't at the gates of Rome at this point. He was in southern Italy, but he was still there and causing a problem, possibly their overthrow. So what did they do? They sent to the oracle and they said, what do we do? And the oracle said, go get the Phrygian mother. Isn't this weird? She said, go get the Phrygian mother and bring her worship. Evoke, they call it an evocatio in Latin. It's an evocation. When you go to a place and you summon the gods out of the place, you take those gods back to your home, you set them up a place of worship there, and you promise them that you will worship them better in back home than they would here, right? So you evoke the god. They only do this for certain gods, right? So this oracle told the Romans to do this. This is like in 205, right? She told the Romans to do this, so they did it. And what happened when they did it? Oh my God, the Roman Empire became, it was still a seed at that point, but that's really when they became an empire.
Right.
They were able to administrate, right? And they had to have special rules because the Romans, they weren't so hot on the whole castration thing. And
No.
And they had national laws, religious laws about what priests can do and what they can't do. Right. It's very
But
regulated.
the Sibylline cults were exempt from those laws. They would be allowed
They had to facilitate the operation of the cult. So basically they gave it carte blanche, but kept it within its own confines. Right. They didn't let it explode.
Right.
But they gave it holidays. We happen to be right in the middle of one right now. Right. The whole spring resurrection cult. Yes. Everybody's about to enter into Easter. And, if you've been looking at the eclipses and the cross in Texas, and it's right over a point where some dude donated some red heifers, they're going to sacrifice them and destroy what's on top of the Temple Mount, right? Bring back. Wait a minute. Did I just step into some kind of drug orgy? No, it's just modern history.
Right.
But the fact is, those oracles at the time were guiding political power.
Right.
And they knew what would solve the problem that the Roman society had encountered. And it was becoming factional, right? What do we do? Now, we haven't handled this war well, and we're getting our butts kicked. What do we do, right? So
pray to this new god and give them, and the Cibil, they created in Rome. They created a temple for Cibil, and that temple is the place where St. Peter's Basilica now stands. Like they built St. Peter's Basilica right on top of the Cibil temple. So it's like that much rooted into the culture of. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. If you are a Christian, you must realize that historically your mystery developed from previous mysteries. All the terminology that you have, the Christ, the child of God, all of that is only from the foundation that is built. Why is it there? What does it have to do? You know what they do? You know what the people think? Okay, I'm going to go to this. I'm going to cut off my testicles. I'm going to become one of these devotees. No. That's not the worship. Some people do that and perpetuate the worship, and that's a class of people, and that's their choice, right? Nobody forces them to do that. They come and volunteer. Yeah,
golly, right?
Yeah, and they take their testicles that they cut off, and remember, you got to be totally. I mean, you're under the influence, right? So, sometimes it happens that even travelers, Lucian says, sometimes tourists will come and get caught up. Remember, they're fumigating. They're fumigating this whole time, and they're adding those trochiskoi that the prophets say you got to have those trochiskoi to have the vision. You got to have those, right?
Which is Ezekiel and trochiskoi. Which is the smoke of a drug concoction that a thurible is spreading this smoke amongst the parishioners. Well, the people, the onlookers, right?
Exactly. And that's exactly what Diodorus describes. He lays that out to show you. This is how you take a population and put them under the influence of your religion. Right? Okay. Thanks. But remember, it's health, right?
Ancient mind control. This is how to do it, guys. Yeah.
You can think of it as mind control, or you can think of it as enhancement, right? Do those drugs enhance brain activity? If they enhance brain activity, then it is truly a medicinal kind of drive.
Right.
It's a healing for the people, and it allows society to enter into a state where they see the real. Cicero says you have not lived until you've been born again in this rite. And that's another term they're using, right? When Jesus says, I'm the only begotten, that's a cult term. Guess who they're using that of originally? Originally, that's the title of Athena, right? And then when you think about it, because she's born from the head of God, right? Of course, that makes sense, right? The only begotten of God. That's an actual title. That's not, Jesus didn't show up on the scene and just start making stuff up, right? He's embedded within a culture, and that power. So what are the celebrants who are not cutting off their testicles? What kinds of things, how are they benefited from the religion? They become vaticinators. Yeah, Vaticanus is our God. You didn't know that. The Vatican Hill didn't have a pope on it. The Vatican Hill had a Cibil on it, and she prophesied under the power of Vaticanus. And that is so strong that we get. And what is it, by the way? What is entering the spirit of Vaticanus? It's vaticination. It's a word, right, that we borrowed from the Latin. It's a state of being prophetically frenzied. If you want the voice, boom, you've got to enter into the mystery, right? You've got to be filled with that spirit, right? You're like, oh, wait a minute, what? Yeah, in the beginning, God created Uranos and Gaia. That's where the mystery begins. The oracle begins with Gaia, right? The
that's like the sky god, and that's like
she's the Dam
Anu of the Sumerians, maybe the Anu.
No, fuck those Sumerians. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No, you feel free, bro. Go ahead.
Right now, hang on a second. The Pelasgians are Chalcolithic. They're Copper Age. This stuff where the Greeks are getting their religion, it predates any of that. People talk to me all the time, and this gets my goat. This really gets my goat. Gilgamesh. What about Gilgamesh? Have you ever read Gilgamesh, Bonehead? Have you ever read it? Did you? If you read it, you would wonder why it reads like it was written by a third grader, right? The Greeks thought so too. The Greeks thought so too. Brr, 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 brr. That's how they talk. Did you know ancient Greek is sung? All of our earliest works are songs.
That makes
Greek
sense.
has
It's easier to remember a song. Like it's probably makes sense because if they're not writing it down, then if they have it in stanzas, I mean, I can remember a song lyric from that I learned when I was 12. Like it's really easy. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got its own pitch. Ancient Greek has pitch, and they run words together just so that it flows melodically like a song.
Interesting.
And Gilgamesh, you're dealing with people who are creating song, advanced. They're using, right? This is the same culture that produced philosophy and science. Nobody ever asked, why didn't science come from somewhere else? It came from the same place that they produced tragedy, comedy, that they produced philosophy, that they produced what you and I would call the scientific method, right? It's all being brought to you by the language. It's not the people. You Greeks, don't get a big head, right? Because the church came in and slaughtered. Modern Greek is not even a vestige of its ancestor, right? You take a modern Greek and you force them, which they try to do, force them to read Homer, and they're like, oh my God, right? It's 3,000 years difference. When the church embraced the people of Greece, it did the same thing it did across Europe. It dumbed down the languages. It took Renaissance to bring elevated Latin back. It took a Renaissance to do that. So my big thing as a classical philologist is to tell people it's the language that is capacitating these discoveries. Not everyone is born equal, right? That sounds terrible. You're like, well, you can't. Not every language is born equal. There are some poopy languages in Italy. There's some poopy languages that are developing around Latin. They just can't hold they just can't hold anything.
Right.
The capacity is poopy. It's way too low.
The idea, like, I guess what you're trying to say is that the ability for people that use that language to think has boundaries on it, and those boundaries are given to you by the language. Like if you don't have the words for it, you can't think it. And same thing with 1984, they're like making the dictionary smaller and smaller because they want to dominate the people. Same thing with like the modern, or well, the Roman Catholics, they dumb down the language on purpose. And so like there's an example that I learned when in like modern hockey, right? You get the difference between Norway and Finland. They have to have two different sets of they have to broadcast it in both languages, and they have to have two separate people speaking it. They can't just translate, because the framing of the thinking, the way that the Finnish people, they describe where the puck is on the court, while the Norwegian people are describing the people around the puck and what they are doing. So they're even describing the same incidents, like the same happening with totally different, they're looking at a different importance. The Finnish people don't care about who is the one that's hitting the puck. They just say the puck goes that way. Their framing of their mind is built because of the language is like that. And I've learned that Finnish people in Europe have trouble with heavy machinery because they see the warning labels and stuff. Their minds don't process the same way as regular Europeans because they had a completely different language that they're working on. So more Finnish people die from heavy equipment in Europe just because of that fact, because of their language. So like that is huge. That's a very big point that you just made right there.
You are what you speak, it turns
Right.
out.
Right.
And they recognized this, and they even mocked, the Greeks mocked, and the Romans with their Latin. And I gotta be honest with you, the Greeks thought the Romans were hut dwelling primitives, right? Um, their language is great engineering. It's great practical engineering, but it cannot reach the elevated thought experiment level that the Greek does. Just in ancient Greek, it's been estimated, we don't know, but it's been estimated there are around 500,000 unique words, right? How many, just to give you a taste, English, your daily speech in English is going to have somewhere between 80,000 to 100,000 if you're lucky, right? Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, it's got 8,000 unique words. Do you know how limiting that is?
Right.
The Greek is able to achieve a technical level that the Hebrew can't. That's why everybody thinks that, because we've had stories, right? This is not from evidence. This is just stories. Israel Finkelstein, the archaeologist in Tel Aviv, came out, right? He's the lead archaeologist, and he came out and he said none of what we call our history, our Jewish history, is actually preserved, right? Why don't we have these great temples? Did you know the Egyptians, who wrote down every battle they ever fought, even if it was between a dozen people, they have no record of the Exodus? There's nothing. He said the archaeological record, and I dug at Megiddo, right? I spent a season digging at Megiddo, and we uncovered a Canaanite temple, right? So I know Israel's not just, he's not just, doesn't just have a theory that he's trying to advance. There is no archaeology to support those texts. Now, linguistically, the Bible that we're talking about, the Old Testament, the Torah, that thing is written linguistically in the 3rd century BC. That's where it slides in linguistically. If you look at the Septuagint, it's from the 3rd century BC. And what they're doing is they're drawing on everything that came out of Alexandria, where they had assembled a giant Greek library. And by the way, let me just say, this is new. People have been watching the uncovering of the library at Herculaneum, right? They had a whole library there that was charred by the pyroclastic flow from Vesuvius, right, in the 1st century. And now they've scanned those, and we can all read them. This is the first complete ancient library ever found, right? Now, you're going to say, oh, what about Nineveh? What about... Do you know what came out of Nineveh? A bunch of clay tablets with chicken scratch that said, I went out and I secured these 12 sheep, and I'm going to take 5 of them, and I'm going to give them to so-and-so, and he's going to give me this, right? And then some third grader with his chicken scratch was managed to come up with a story about a guy who has a relationship with another hairy guy, right? And it's not what's driving and building society. The languages, you can see, as the languages evolve and grow, that they have a chance to reach out to that Tower of Babylon. They have a chance to reach that height. And most of them never make it. It's sad, Umbrian. Oh, it's a perfectly good Italian language, right? Umbrian went into the toilet, right? It became useless. Nobody uses it, right? Yeah, how expressive did they get? Oh, ended up list of cattle again. You know what I mean?
Just commerce stuff, right?
Yeah. And who are the Romans learning to write from? Did you know the Romans, those hut-dwelling Romans, a Greek woman came over and said, look, why don't you use this script and you can make letters? And they're all like, oh, letters, right? And she was like, oh, God, these people, right? And so they decided that she was going to be one of the great goddesses that would lead them forward. Right?
So was this the female Hermes? Is this Medea that you're describing?
No.
Okay.
No.
I think of her as like a female Hermes, right? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could, but it's Evander's mommy, right? And they call her Carmenta eventually in Rome, which is their name for Muse, right? Carmenta just means singer.
Okay.
Right. So they call her the singer. Why did they do that? Because she's doing exactly what the oracles had done for hundreds of years by then. Right. They'd already been established since the late Bronze Age. They were just doing the same thing, pushing out those oracles. And that was driving society. And if we have to become Vatican followers, we have to enter into that state of ecstasy, right? That Bacchic ecstasy is what anybody who's a Catholic, your entire religion is based in this authority, this oracular authority, right? And don't think that Jesus wasn't acknowledging it, because he used all the terminology. And it looks like even his mother, Mary, because we have apocryphal texts that say Mary was put in the temple. And when she was 12, when she became a hot 12-year-old, and you're like, what? Yeah, when she became a hot 12-year-old in this apocryphal text, right? What did they do? They gave her out by lots. But why? Because she had been feeding. You know, Mary, the virgin, had been feeding in the temple from the angels. Did you know that? It made her fingers purple. Wait, what? Yeah, when they found out she was pregnant, the midwife went to palpate her and burned her hands, right? That's part of this burning purple. The history of this burning purple. It became a drug that was used widely across the Mediterranean. It wasn't just Palestine or Judea. It wasn't that. It was as far west as those little islands, Minorca, where they discovered the stuff in their hair, right? And they've got the drugs that make you insane that they're using, right? And you're like, wow. And modern scholars are like, whoa, what's going on? They just discovered henbane. Since the last time we talked, they discovered more drugs that they were using. And it's these psychosis-inducing drugs. Because if you need mental health, you got to have psychosis. Isn't that funny? You know, you run.
The modern day, they do that. Like a lot of the drugs they give people today are psychosis inducing. Anyway, please, because I mean, like suicidal ideology is increased. Like SSRIs and such. Like it's. Anyway, please continue.
Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it? The drug makes you want to kill yourself, right?
How is that healing anyone?
Look, I was depressed and I entered the cult, and after a weekend of 48 hours of a sustained erection, lots of hallucinations, I don't know, I came back with marks all over me. It felt good at the time, right? People are surprised. They're like, there's no way that what he's saying is true. You can go right today to the Met in New York, the museum, and you can walk in there and you can see they have set up not only a room full of penises aimed at your face, right? Because this is part of the magic, right? But they also have the Villa of the Mysteries. When you walk into the Villa of the Mysteries, and and you see what's on the walls, the first thing you see is this young girl naked being beaten, right? By this great divine entity. Whew, there's a sexiness there, right?
And a deviance, like, whoa.
Well, yeah, exactly, right? Exactly. Do you need the deviance to find your way back to the normal? If you are never put to death, you will never know what coming back to life is like. And let me tell you something. They can put you to death and put you into a state. Now they're gonna bring out the orgasmon, right? That orgasm, they're gonna bring it out forcefully, right? You asked earlier about the dildo,
scary,
right?
Anyway,
you asked earlier about the dildo before, Sean. You kind of
the alabastron.
Right. Yeah. The medicated. Let's be adults. The medicated dildo that they're using. You kind of steered shy of it, and you were like, "Well, that's kind of like torture." Right. The thing is, though, you're under the influence of drugs to the point that your mind is in a psychotic state, And if they do this to you, they can force you to come to the point of an orgasm. And that's important, because when you orgasm as you're dying, waking you up gives you new life, right? Because you will see as you die, and they call these drugs the thanasimoi, the drugs that induce a death state.
Right.
So once you've had that, don't worry, you've been sucking from the priestess's nipples. And as a result, I'm serious.
I'm sorry, just the words you said, it's silly. I mean, don't worry, you've been
it's medicine, continue. Man.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to giggle. Go ahead.
You're at your clinic, right? You're at your doctor's clinic, right? Man. Come on. Right. Let's get
the stinging nettles and the milk from an underage girl that has scales.
Yeah. Right. So because of that, you have the antidote on board, and you can be revived. It's not going to kill you, right? It's going to put you. Now, sometimes people do die, and that's an unfortunate, people die in medicine all the time, right? So that's an unfortunate thing. But the more people we treat this way, the better we get.
Right.
And what do you do? Isn't this interesting in the medicine? As soon as that person comes back to life and they're all happy, you take them and you record their visions. This is the cool thing. Like, what kind of data is that? As a scientist who cut up brains in a lab and was localizing peptides in the brain, as a scientist, I got to say, that's really interesting. What kind of data can you harvest from somebody's vision, right? What kind of data? And, they map, the priests, they map the invisible through the reports of the people who've been shot up in the death rockets. Wow. Right? It's a form of exploration, right? It's not the frontier of space. It's the frontier of being. It's the quantum, right? Getting to that place, what they called across the dark star. You know what we're going to do? We're going to shoot you across the dark star, and we're going to use the morning star to guide you. Isn't that nice? Lucifera, we call her, right? The great Uranian mother, right? Venus. And we Romans, we're all descendants of hers. So you understand that when we shoot you into the other side, you're a child going back to the source.
Right.
Yeah, I love it. Interesting stuff, no?
So that's why it's a born again. Like, didn't Pythagoras, wasn't he initiated in the pyramid of in Egypt?
We know from the text, we know that he traveled to Egypt to study with the priests. Right. And from there, he traveled to the east to study with the Magi. Right. He's working with it. Yes. So the answer is yes. He's working within the context of their mysteries. And he's talking about, 6 times 6 times 6 is the number of years where the cycle takes over. Right. So you can trace your history through memory, right? Memory is mother of the Muse. And that's why all the Greeks, they have all their temples to the Muse. And what do you have in the very center of your temple to the Muse? You have a giant penis.
Well, I mean, that's the obelisk of Egypt, like the whole thing with Osiris, and he was destroyed by Set and then dismembered into pieces, and his penis was thrown into eaten by a fish, and so they had to make a fake one. This and Isis, with this alabastron, I guess, that she put on the dead body of, and she did some necromancy and created new life inside, which is Horus. And that's the same idea as like,
it's the very same rite, and Jesus is doing it on boys. There are numerous boys that Jesus is doing this Osirian Dionysiac Bronze Age death and resurrection right on. And you can follow Jesus after he's done with his 12 teenagers that he messes around with all day. You say, what? Yeah, you call them disciples or apostles, right? When he's done with those boys, he goes to the cemetery and he raises other boys. Right now, one of these boys falls for Jesus, right? And this is the whole controversy that is the letter of Pseudo Clement, where it says Jesus was teaching the kid naked, the mystery rite. And, it's like the text is like, yeah, this kind of thing we can't tell everybody. Right? It's hilarious. The author is hilarious who's writing. It's really funny.
Yeah.
But it sure would explain what this naked kid is doing with Jesus in a public park when he gets arrested, screaming. Jesus says, you ought to quote this from Jesus: I am not a child trafficker. That's what he tells the Roman SWAT unit that was there to pick him up. Right. And the naked kid runs off. Now, interestingly enough, the naked kid has a bandage on his penis and it falls off when he runs. It's perfectly ritual mystery. In any other context, this would be ritual mystery. But you notice the Christians are scrambling. Right. This is the ceiling. This is the stuff I get in trouble for. And all I'm doing is bringing you the text. Well, right. That's exactly what happened.
You're very welcome to bring all the information here on our show. So we're not afraid.
I love your audience.
That's great. Right. Well, we love you, man. So me thinking about like the bandage on the penis of a little kid reminds me of circumcision, which I talk about a lot. And what they do, they remove certain flesh from the penis, which is the most absorbent, and it has the most nerve endings, and that it's like denying them the ability to feel that, and it's almost like putting their mind in, like they're not able to achieve the true orgasm in their mind. They can maybe ejaculate, but they're not going to get the same nerve endings and feelings that a magician doing sex magic might achieve. I wonder if that is part of the keeping us enslaved under the, in our bodies. I don't know if you ever thought about that, but little babies, they bleed out, because of what they do. It's routine in America, and they have to apply a bandage to this, and it's their first sexual experience. And I don't know. What do you think of that? I don't know about that. What do you think?
I think scientifically, we have to say, what was that stuff on Jesus's face when he got arrested? Okay, because I can point you to medical texts. Galen and his antidotes is one where they harvested prepubertal ejaculate. They harvested prepubertal ejaculate, and they harvested breast milk from prepubertal girls, right? Girls who are under the influence of the viper venom that induces lactation, right? Those girls. These aren't just anybody off the street, but these are people who are being actively manipulated chemically. So, okay. So that boy stuff, when Jesus gets arrested, he's got the goop on his face. If it's a combination, if it's what Galen is talking about, it's a combination of the drugs that are being used in the rites, like the one Jesus gives to Judas, right? And we have texts that tell us, there were antidotes for that stuff. And by the way, we have a text that says when Jesus is hanging there on the cross and he's all, oh, I'm thirsty, right? And he's saying the cult words, lama sabachthon, right? That's not Hebrew or Aramaic or Sumerian or Gilgamesh. It's Greek. It's straight up Greek that's being used in the magical papyri. And Jesus is using it as well, right? And what's happening is he's thirsting because he's had too much of the dipsass. If you could bring up a North African horned viper, this is the snake that they're deriving this drug from, and it induces extreme thirst, or they call it polydipsia. So, okay, back to the kid. When Jesus is hanging there on the cross, they give him something they call oxus. Oxus was the name of the antidote that they used. And somebody in antiquity pointed this out, not me. His name was Nonus. And Nonus points out this drug that they've got that they're giving Jesus, it's meant to counteract that mystery drug. It's an antidotos, right? That's the Greek word for antidote. That they made up that word. By the way, half of your language is stuff that we stole from the Greeks. We Anglo-Saxons are so uninventive. Our language so hamstrings us that we have to borrow concepts from Greek, right? And by the way, the Romans couldn't generate this stuff. We get some roots from the Romans, but don't kid yourself, right? The Romans are also getting them from the Greeks. So,
he was given the antidote, because he was in the middle of a rite and he drank the vinegar to counteract the thirst that comes along with the use of the fluids in a ritual. Because in the Garden of Gethsemane, he had two of his apostles on the lookout. He was
three. He had three.
And he was there in the garden with the young boy doing a process. And then the SWAT team shows up. The kid runs away. The linen falls from the kid, and he's naked as he runs. And Jesus says, "I'm not a lay stace."
Right.
So that right there. So Jesus himself is like, his mother is in the cult and was used in the cult. That's why he was born of a what is it called? Non-natural birth or something. I forget the term, but it was and
they called it contrary to nature, right? That's how these virgin births on the medical side, that's how they're depicted.
Right. Like, so that's like Widdershins, like the against nature. That's like the left-hand path of the dark occult. But anyway, so like,
and that's why the Magi are all behind this. Remember, it's their technology that he's giving them, right? They're giving him those drugs for a reason.
Right. So they needed to breed these children. He's part of a breeding program where the mother was in the cult. He was raised with this cult mentality, and he continued like modern day SRA people that are into the satanic end of that type of torturing kids. It's a generational thing that's like taught and brought from generation to generation. Jesus was probably subjected to whatever. He was probably, harvested his fluids when he was a kid. So to him, it's probably normal. I mean, I'm not making excuses like all rape is bad, obviously, but, this is the culture and this is the technology of the time. And Jesus is just continuing that same line of thinking, I guess. So like, and it started with Medea, right? Am I correct?
It started with Medea and the forceful inspiration and conversion of people, right? She was doing it forcefully, right? It's not against your will. If I enter your house and drug you and transform you and give you an experience that causes you to suddenly see the world as I see it and to be born again, it's not voluntary.
Right. Because it's like the cult takes over your mind, and then you give your will to the cult, just like all cults, right?
Yeah. And think about the boy. It says the bandage is on his gumnos. It says it's on his private parts, right? And if they're using the burning purple, it's going to cause a dark stain to his galene, right? That boy produces a galene. And you say, what's a galene? A galene is a theriac or an antidote. It means the calming of the storm. So the really bad stuff that those snake venoms can induce, and I'm not talking about just one injecting, I'm talking about this is daily administration through lateral slits, right? This is stuff that they're killing people with, right, by overusing. And that little kid, his ejaculate, his prepubertal ejaculate, contains something that counteracts this whole process. He's used like a little machine,
Right.
like a little machine. Gaius Valerius Flaccus describes Medea's use of her own vagina to administer drugs as that kind of pharmaceutical machine, right? It's you're able
It's
to produce.
hijacking the mechanics of the human body to create these drugs,
Right.
because we don't have a modern like modern day. We have like a level 4 bio research laboratory where we can like combine genetics and whatnot. With in those days, these combinations had to be done within the human body itself.
Huh.
That's the only way to create new drugs. Like we have compound drugs today where you like doctors can order specific amounts of this kind of drug for this drug, and then put it together, and they combine to react with each other in a certain way. So that theriac that you mentioned, like some of the recipes for theriac it has like 200 elements in the recipe that are combined. I mean, the main portion of it is opium and snake flesh, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And henbane. Now, the funny thing is in the theriac de Paizo, they list, Galen lists for you the original formula that Nero's physician got. We talked about that, right? And if you look at the theriac itself in that work, it's all drugs that are meant to balance the ones that he lists as being that Black Death of Medea. And she's the only person they give credit for it. Right. So when I say the communion, the mystery communion is originally coming from Medea, it's not me. Nero's physician was saying the very same thing. And if you stack up all those ingredients of the Black Death, they are the things like the opium, the hemlock. They put hemlock in it. Apparently, hemlock at low levels won't kill you. It'll just boost you to a place. I don't know, of brain activity that does something to you.
Like
but
deadly
also
nightshade.
Aconite's another one.
Okay, right. Aconite, please continue. I don't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. It's a whole bunch of poisons, like terrible poisons, right?
Yes.
So the theriac is made to balance that poisonous death inducer. Right. The theriac is what brings you life. Do you know why Lady Babylon in the Book of the Apocalypse is riding on a therion, on what you and I stupidly translate as beast? Right? It's a compound.
Really?
Yeah. Right? It's her cup. Don't you remember? It's the cup of Lady Babylon. That's the big threat.
Cup of abominations.
Exactly. And what is
the abominations? It's just death because it has all those poisons, right?
It has porneia in it. It is the pollution of her porneia. And you recognize the word pornography, right? She is ejaculating. Her body is the cup. Now, when you take that cup, when you take that blood of Medea, you have to also have her flesh. You have to have a theriac to balance it, right? See, the problem is what Yahoo knows is that when this mystery is induced, people wake up.
Right.
And the end,
so that's why
end of the Bible is a great war against this woman born up on the theriac who can bring awakening, right? Because Yahoo doesn't want awakening. Right?
Well, Yahoo sent his son here, and we celebrate that by drinking blood and flesh. Like we talked about on that other episode about how it's almost like an occult mockery of the Christians, but still, it's a combination of the drinking from the cup and then eating of flesh. So maybe that counteracts the medicine in the cup, and that's just they're reenacting that whole thing.
Exactly. And that's why he's standing at that well. You got the picture, the historical picture exactly. That's why he's standing by that well with the Sumerian woman. He says, hey, if you'd have asked me, I'd have given you the aqua vitae, right? I'd have given you the water of life, baby, right? Why? Because Jesus has become, if he's the Christ, he's the one who is able to produce the blood and the flesh,
Right.
right? He's able to do it. What is he doing with that kid? He is initiating them into the mysteries. He is perpetuating the same thing that, like you said, he probably did himself. We don't have any evidence for that. As soon as I find you a text, like if they open up this Julian library and all of a sudden we find out there's a, we've got additional evidence, fine. But I have to stay. You know how it is, Sean. I have to stay with just what we've got with evidence, because people will look at this and they'll be like, oh my God, it's crazy. Right.
Well, thank goodness you're keeping us on the rails of truth instead of going into speculation. Like, I appreciate that.
Yeah. What's the stuff on Jesus's face, do you think? That's my question, right? So the church comes out years later, right? Because they have to explain this stuff. And Gregory the Great came out and pardoned Mary for her sex drugs. He says that openly in one of his homilies, like 31, 33, something like that. And they have to explain the kid, right? We have to explain the kid. How do we explain the flesh and the blood, right? As soon as, because there's a prohibition early on. Our oldest Christian documents talk about getting the plants out of the communion. Right. There's a schism right away that people are like, no. And the Gnostics are all like, no, man, we got to get high and drink semen. Right. right. No, I'm serious. We have that in the heresiologies, right? They talk about what they do. And one of the things is drinking semen. It was not odd to Jesus when he was arrested in a public park with a naked kid with a bandage on his penis. It was not odd to drink semen. The Ophites do it. Sorry, but that's one of the Christian sects, right? The Ophites, and they do this. They drink semen. Right.
And then you got the Knights Templar who were like kissing each other on the butt, and they worshipped this Baphomet who had a beard and a vagina, and it had chains connected to the sun and the moon, and was like gonna pull them down. Like, whoa! Like, and these people, like, they believe they're trapped here by Yahoo, and they can like destroy reality with their sex magic. It's quite a rabbit hole to go down into.
Also, with Baphomet, I think you got to consider that Baph is the Greek root for to dye with the purple, and the Met is it's one step away from the Medwa in the Greek. That's the Medea. Wow. And curiously enough, which makes great sense, it looks like the Etruscans developed. They also write about Medea, right? Medea was so influential, the Etruscans wrote about her too. And you got to be super influential because they are not big on cataloging, right? So they wrote about and they put her in the art and they displayed her in the art. But they called her Mattia with that Met root on it. So Baphomet may be somebody's construction to try to bring back that kind of figure of the Medwa, the holy Medwa, that holy healer. But it was
think the character that is both genders and has those chains was called Meat. METE, I think.
Yeah,
but
Mete. Nice.
Right. So like that might be the same. It's interesting. I've talked to a lot of, like, I've got friends that are studying, they're seeing a current revival of the female religion, and it seems like it's always been the same religion. It's always been that same, you got Cibil and Ishtar and Inanna, and it's like all the same. And Medea is like the real character, like in flesh of this. And they had the priestesses, the young virgins of Inanna would do the sex rites with the people, and the ejaculation into that young priestess of Inanna is like cleansing the population of their sins, and that's, that it goes back. That's like the origin of like the donation plate at the Catholic Church. You know what I mean? You go and you put money in there, and like, oh, now I don't have sin anymore. Same thing. But
the Romans arrested those Catholics early on. They called them Civilists, but they did it for the sake of the incest laws they were breaking, because their orgies were notorious for getting totally naked, right, in the dark, and just loving whatever came to you. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's a lot of they're rubbing up against that incest stuff.
But then eventually the Romans had the Saturnian celebrations every year, and they would have the Cibil cult would like have like a parade, they would be like they would be like the anti-mask, like they would be they would show all the debauchery and then the sun would come and clean them away, in this like procession where they would play the music, and the people would the priests that had been that had become eunuchs or whatever, they're like whipping themselves, and the blood is getting everywhere, and that blood supposedly is a good thing, and it's supposed to help clean people and whatever, and so that blood gets all over everybody. Same thing what they did to Jesus with the cat of nine tails and all the blood, and
wasn't that sexy? Wasn't that sexy? I think somebody captured.
How deviant do you have to be to think it's sexy? Anyway, yeah. So
can you watch Mel Gibson's Jesus torture and crucifixion? Can you watch that without becoming aroused? That's the real question.
I get horrified. Jesus, dude. Oh my God. Yeah. It really separates the wheat from the chaff, I guess. Like, oh, you go around and do like a lap check on everybody with a flashlight. Man. Oh my God.
What's the safe word? I forgot the safe word. What is it? Savior. Oh, that's right. Savior.
I thought it was lace taste. So I'm not a lace taste. Anyway. Okay. Yeah, so definitely. This ancient female religion is, do you think it's like resurfacing? Do you think because we have the rulers of this world are members of the dark occult, and just like the Knights Templar, they spoke with this Baphomet, this baptism of wisdom, they called him whatever, and that cup in Mystery's hand is like to be baptized into that, like that is what Baphomet was bringing these people, and then they became so powerful and rich because of their knowledge that they learned from this non-corporeal entity that they rivaled the Pope, and the Pope had to smash them to bits. And and then we have the start of the Freemasons and the Rosicrucians and this Renaissance era of and this carries on to today, and we still have bloodlines today where they're torturing their youth and they're doing sex rites, and we see that in Eyes Wide Shut, like Kubrick was showing us this. And do you think that they are revealing this and turning this into the new religion of the future? Do you see that as the case?
The good thing is the mystery is scientific, so it's got to chemically work. Right. It's a lot of biology and a lot of biochemistry. So if anybody is trying to do this today, and I agree with you, when you're a Templar and you have to make a decision, do I lick this man's taint or do I lick the head of his penis? Right. And why do they do that? Because they got that purple cross in their underwear, comes out of their butt. Right, because that's where you administer the drug. But you can have the initiate lick your taint. Right, there was the two places in the trials of these Templars. The two places you could lick was that taint or that head of the penis. Right. So what does that mean scientifically? It means the Templars were on to the actual chemical mystery, right? If the Masons, I've talked to Masons, I'm not impressed. If the Masons,
right.
or British royalty or whatever, I'm not impressed with them either, by the way.
Me neither, dude. Thank God.
But if they were able to do this, they would have to have come to the point that they reproduce the oracle. What is the real advantage in all of this is when you break those bonds and you reach the other side of what they call the dark star, and you're actually in what is reality. See, that's the joke. This is not reality. It's a reflection. They referred to it as a reflection, and that's how the Etruscans explained it. It's a reflection. So when you burst those bonds and you get to that other side, that's why what you experience is so important, because that's going to become the real data that we're examining. So your rebirth is an actual change, a transformation in your understanding of the universe, right? That whole act, they're not modern groups unless they've made the oracle, and the oracle can tell them. Okay, I'm just telling you what they said. The oracle can tell you past, present, and future in one, right? That composition enables people to guide magically what's happening around them. It's like a level of quantum control, information control, these images, right? Remember, these are people who are eidolon. They work with the eidolon, the image. We say idolaters now, right? And you can see why a chemical mystery is going to be reliant upon images. So if they were to get it started, say a bunch of Freemasons sits around and gets the right document, I'll give them to them. Let them try to reproduce it. They have to produce that oracle. And guess what? You can't just take anybody and create an oracle. Just like they did Mary.
You got to breed them, right?
Yes, they have to be bred, and they have to be put through the proper regimen to be able to become that Vatican prophet.
That's the same. That's the same with the priestesses of Inanna. The townspeople would donate their prepubescent daughter to the church. So she'd never been touched by a man sexually, and then she goes through the rites for the church, and she becomes a nun, and then she's told to do the sex magic and to receive the semen from all the people, and her body is the vehicle which cleanses them of their sin. And it's they had to breed them into that, and they had to get them prepubescent. But as far as the snake venoms and creating this Medea type medicine that takes from almost infancy, right? Or they even breed them that way, right?
Yeah, I would argue you could take a 7 to 9 year old, and on the Greek side, when you look at the bears, for example, that served Diana, and Diana is known as the poison pourer. They called her Iokeira, right? Now you know why Diana brings death and life, right? As a twin of Apollo, they bring death and then they bring life. She's a huntress, and she's also the one who you go to when you need to start a delivery. Right? You go to Artemis. She's the one who has the drugs that will induce your birth. You mean they were inducing birth in antiquity? Yes. And they were artificially inseminating too. And then using the product of the artificial insemination. You can bleed a fetus. The value of fetal blood. Oh my God.
I'm sure modern medicine does. I mean, they make tons of money on all those abortions, for real. They sell the parts, all of it. It's disgusting.
No, well, anyway. Wait a minute though. If you can line up for fetal milkshake, and it turns out, no, I'm serious.
I'm listening. Thank you.
If it turns out that a little fetal blood is the cure of a specific disease or ailment, right? Why would you stop in antiquity? Why would you stop? This is fetal blood.
course.
It's sort of, we use gladiators too that way. There's nothing better than a fresh killed gladiator, especially if you get them before they die, because they still have their vital essence, right? You know what that liver can do? That's amazing. What chemical? What
That's another thing.
processes,
If you listeners should know that if you're an organ donor, they take your organs before you die to maintain that vital essence, like what Ammon just told us here. That's modern medicine now.
Yeah.
That's what they do. So you should take that off your driver's license if you got a license.
Look, I don't want to stop people from getting my organ. I'm actually a donor.
But I mean, if you think about it, they got to remove
what you're
them
saying is right.
It's like Monty Python's skit right there, where they're like, "Oh, we're here to collect your organs. You're a donor." Like, anyway, go ahead.
You're not just whistling Dixie, because that, or you can't take that dead tissue. That dead tissue does nothing.
Exactly.
They said there's a transformation in death. So you need those vital essences, right? Jesus is offering his blood and his flesh for a reason, right? Jesus didn't walk around. The fairy tale that we have is he walked around, he made up words like Christ, and he was the son, he's the only son of God, and he's going to do X, Y, and Z for you. You got to drink his flesh. He just means symbolically, you got to drink his flesh. I can tell you, I look right into the face of a bishop. You know who I am. Bishop, I'm looking at you in the eyes. Your communion is meaningless because you missed one step. This has to be vital essence. That blood, it has to be living. There is no transformation of this into the blood of the Savior in antiquity. It is the blood of the Savior in antiquity. Jesus had no plans for the communion post-death, right? He's got no plans. It's his body that brings salvation, right? And that's perfectly in line with all of the mysteries that work to develop Christianity, that it springs from. You need that living blood. You need that life, right? And if you haven't had, look, I can get you a teenage, pimply redhead. Somebody bring me a redhead, 15-year-old.
Judas? Like teenage redhead? Sorry, go ahead.
Boom. I can show you the rite. We have it preserved in which you take this pimply teenage redhead and you put him on a spit. I know it doesn't sound bad, right? But you put him on a spit and you got to drug him first, right? Not because he's got to be drugged. We don't care about him, right? Right? He's the sacrifice. But his body is the source. So he has to have a certain number of drugs on board, which we give him. And guess how we give it to him? We give it to him anally. We ejaculate in his face, right? His eyes particularly. I don't know. Maybe that was effective somehow. And then we tie him up. We tie him up and turn him on the spit. And it says you got to heat him. You got to elevate his body temperature. Wow. Yeah. Now remember, you've given him psychotics. So at this point, you have to tie him up. You have to restrain him. It's got to be against his will. You're beating him and everything. You know what I mean? And then what do? What does the text say? It's the Deortu Waluani. If nobody believes me, go look it up. Halfway through. It's in the description of Medea's Greek fire. And it talks about all the venoms that are actually used in the fire. Not the snake flesh, but the venoms. Cool. So you wonder why Venus is the same as the poison, right? It's the word for poison. And so what do they do for this kid? You then collect his blood. You cut open, it says you make lateral slits. Right. As soon, and this is weird, I don't know what this is, but it says as soon as his what we would call blood pressure is at its peak. So I don't know what that means. And remember, he's got an erection too. Why? Because the drugs that we're giving him cause an erection.
That's probably what they're talking about, because it takes blood to cause an erection. So that's probably what they're saying.
So we bleed them, then we bleed them. And what do we do with that blood? That blood is now our communal drug, right? Our communal drug. It's got something in it. I don't know. It makes me want to go back in time and either watch what they're doing, or it makes me kind of, I don't know, a little bloodthirsty. You know what I mean? I don't know. Give me some. Does this stuff cure cancer? I just want to know. Does this stuff cure cancer? Because they're talking about compounds that they're actively using. Galen is talking about it to treat breast cancer, right? This thing will take a tumor that you find in a woman's breast and it'll shrink it until it's gone. Yeah, I want to know.
So,
have they found out something?
So it takes in order to get stem cells in modern medicine, it takes aborted fetus tissue.
Yeah.
So it's like you got to do the sacrifice to get the benefit. Like, even, if you don't believe a myth at all, like, they're doing it now. I mean, they're killing babies, taking their tissue, their vital essence, while they're still alive. They're sucking them out of the womb and preparing it for medicines. Like, that's happening.
Haven't you had fetal bone marrow?
For breakfast today I had some.
No. The Romans are saying that meal that you need comes from the bone marrow. Why do you think they're the skin changers? You guys call them werewolves, right? Due to some BS.
Lycanthropes, like.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And how do you get to this point? You need marrow, baby. You need marrow. It turns out fetal marrow is the thing to have if you want to have a longer, more healthy life.
Wow.
Right? Isn't that great? And that's the reputation that Medea got, was life extension. That's the reputation she got for being, and she pioneered, get this, in the Bronze Age, she is pioneering transfusion. Transfusion. Can you believe that? It's like, oh, wow, they were really taking it to the next level. So
she had to, like, the blood types and stuff had to match. They had to have that understanding.
And maybe that's why there's so many of them are dying.
Yeah, right. So Marina Abramovich, a modern occult witch of today, she uses breast milk, blood, semen in her art, in quotes, in her, like, it's ritual. And she is like over 70 years old and she doesn't have any wrinkles. And then you got, like, the, what's her name? The Elizabeth Bathory would, like, bathe in virgin blood and she would stay young and whatnot. And then modern day, we got Sandra Bullock gets foreskins of little babies injected into her face so that she doesn't get wrinkles on her face. She talks about it on Ellen DeGeneres' show there. So these modern day priestesses are doing this right now. I mean,
scratching the surface, I'd say, because until they can ejaculate the communion that causes me to be able to be born again, I'd say they haven't. That's why when people ask me, do you think, and people ask me this all the time, do you think that this can be done today? Yes, definitely it could, but you would have had to have years of prep for this. And you would have had to have the right recipes and the right drugs and the right regimen. It's basically comes down to the right regimen. In the Greek magical papyri, there is a section on what we've called the Mithridatic liturgy, or the liturgy of Mithras. And in that, there is a specific chemical regimen that you have to follow in order to be guided through this process. That's a perfect little type of the mystery in general. Right? This takes cultivation. This takes a while to be able to produce the person who can produce the drug. Yeah, it's if you think about it, it's really kind of Renaissance and revolutionary. You are not giving drugs to treat patients for a specific disease. You're giving drugs to a patient to cause them to produce their own drugs.
Right.
And to me, that's medicine is going to catch up with this, right? There will be a renaissance, and medicine will catch up. Right now in Australia, I know they're looking at, at least about 6 years ago, they were looking at the use of venoms in the treatment of things like Parkinson's, right? How different is that, right? There's something in the venom that, interacts a certain way with the brain and causes you, it could possibly be used as a treatment to stop the progression of the little bodies that form in Alzheimer's, right? Or in Parkinson's, those Levy bodies, I think they're called. Anyway,
the snake venoms are being looked at in medicine a lot more too, because certain snake venoms coagulate the blood, certain snake venoms shut down the central nervous system, and these are methods that could be very useful in surgeries and in healing people. If you can shut down the central nervous system of someone with Parkinson's who's they're shaking all the time, I mean, you could just give them a drink of some like juice from cannabis leaves and they'd be all set. But in any case, when you combine, plants aren't the only source of medicine. That's obvious, and like we talked about on the other show, the scorpion venom and the snake venoms are an untapped resource. But I mean, we're kept in this little box of, you must use medicines from the Rockefeller medicine that they give you, and they, it's all from like oil byproducts and poisons and such. But I mean, our bodies have these keys inside, like the same way that the cannabinoid of the cannabis plant is able to, it matches an endogenous molecule that we produce to regulate all kinds of systems in our body. We have an endocannabinoid system. That plant unlocks that certain key in our brain, and who's to say that a snake venom doesn't do the same thing with a different lock in our heads?
Exactly. Especially if the venoms are acting as hormone analogs, then you're just triggering the same machinery that's there programmed in your genes anyway. You're just activating that machinery. Imagine this. Imagine a virgin who is inseminated using the process that exposes that seed to the fire. Right. Okay. So you're mixing a compound with the ejaculate and they do this in modern day AI anyway. The semen, the frozen semen, it's got to have a medium that it's in that will facilitate the action of the sperm, right? Protect it while it's frozen and then facilitate the action. They're doing the same thing in antiquity. But those fetuses that they produce, and if you don't believe me, go read some Eustathius. The fetus that's used from that is taken from a mother who for 9 months has been on a regimen. So her blood is going to contain the elements that will be interacting with whatever she's doing in that child. Do some things get across the barrier? Does that child absorb certain things? They say don't drink when you're pregnant, right? Why do they say don't drink when you're pregnant? Because that alcohol will influence the development of the fetus. Exactly. Well, it's just chemistry, biochemistry.
Breast milk has cannabinoids, and that helps the baby's development. And what else is passed through through the milk? Go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say, then you can take that fetus and that really soft spot on the top of the head, you can penetrate down to the third ventricle. That ventricle is a pool in the middle of your brain with the most pristine fluid. That fluid is full of neurotransmitters. And what is it going to do? It's going to act on the hypothalamus because that's the tissue that's right under it. So this is the central hub of your brain's chemical magic. It's right in that third ventricle. You know, you can take a baby's head that's freshly born, because you know they come out all soft. They
I
come out all
know.
soft and pliant.
I had a thermometer in my head. I was like stillborn, and they put a thermometer in my brain right there in the soft part of my head when I was a baby.
Yeah.
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 I
You can
survived
go
somehow.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. If you've got the barb, if you've got the tooth, you can get all the way down and access that area of the brain.
Jesus.
What is that? What does that fluid do for us? You know, they talk about also removing the stone that is the serpent stone, right? Some people, you know, I've had people tell me it's got to be the pineal gland. You know, well, there's lots of goodies in your brain. You know, they can pull out your pituitary and do something with that too, right? But the fact is, they're deriving medicines from these biological processes, and fetuses just happen to be one of the things on the list. You know, I can also ask your virgin daughter to piss into a bowl, and I can clean out my newborn's eyes with it. And her urine, no, I'm serious, her urine will kill our chlamydial infections that we've got.
Right.
Yeah. Isn't that great? What are you feeding that kid?
Yeah. If you get bit by a jellyfish, get a pregnant woman to pee on it, and the pain goes away. It's true. I mean, I don't know. It's a wives' tale, I guess, but it's what I've heard to be true. You know,
it's worth a try. You know, if you get you know, stung by a man of war or something, you should at least try. Get somebody to piss on you. You know what I mean? But that's the spirit. I'm joking, but that's the spirit in antiquity. How do you think they found out that beaver perianal gland will take away your headache? You know, you got to be chasing down beavers and eating perianal glands. You know what I mean?
Modern day science uses beaver anal glands for vanilla and strawberry, and they call it natural flavors because it comes from a beaver, it comes from nature. So like when you're looking at the fruit roll-ups, it says like naturally flavored, you know, that strawberry comes from beaver's butthole. It's really weird. They got to dilute it a lot, but go ahead. Yeah, please.
They called beaver butt juice, they called it castoreum in antiquity. It was very valuable. It was very valuable because those beavers were eating willow bark, and that willow bark was concentrating salicylic acid. They were basically getting some kind of aspirin, primitive aspirin. Right. You know, everybody gets excited, and it is exciting to figure out what it is in the Eleusinian mysteries that's in the Kukeon. Right. And I want to remind the audience that Kukeon, that drink that is the masterful mind transforming drink, that's one ingredient in the Theriac, right? That Nero and his people are trying to revive. They're trying to bring this thing back. It's one ingredient in it. So was it LSD? Was it ergot that was, you know, could be transformed by the right enzyme? Yeah. Well, who knows?
All the mushrooms,
who knows, right?
I mean,
At least we know they're using
mushrooms.
it, you know?
I mean, they had mescaline, they had psilocybin, they had the muscanol of the Amanita muscaria, they had datura, you know, they had like there was a wide range that they were using, and I'm not sure if that's all ingredients of the Theriac. I mean,
did you ever smoke mandrake? I wouldn't.
No, I did. I'll tell you what, I did smoke some 80X salvia.
Oh, how did that go?
I was a cartoon, and I was like, I was in the wall, dude. I was two-dimensional part of like, and there was a long line of me in the wall. Like there was me way over there in the future, and there was me way in the past, and I was like stuck, like I'm a painting or something. And then as the music would go, another one of me would fall into the third dimension and fall off of the wall. And then it came my turn, and I fell down, and my cat was looking at me. It was the scariest thing. I imagined, oh, my reality's gone now. This is the new reality. I just accepted, oh, whoops, I slipped away, and now it's gone. And this is what, you know, and when I fell off the wall, all of a sudden, the whole, I mean, it it was another level. And I've never tried datura or any of these other like henbane and shit. But if that can happen with just salvia, like holy crap. And no wonder that's the legal one, because it's scary as shit. I talked to friends of mine that are like, dude, I was cut in half when I was on salvia. I was like, what? You know, it's very scary. And so like people need to know that.
Yeah. Now imagine you've got a substance like salvia, and salvia just acts on kappa opiate receptors, right? So your body already has the engineering to make salvia work, right? So it's kappa opioid. And so imagine you've got that drug now. Now we take you out of your house. You go through a week's worth of fasting, right? No food. You're in a starvation state. Why? For some reason, for these mysteries, they have to put you into a metabolic state of ketosis. I don't understand why it is.
That helps too, because then you can work on the cellular. You can heal the cells, and you can heal the mitochondria when you bring the cell into ketosis. That way, it doesn't. It's interesting, but that's one of the ways to heal cancer. That people should look into that. I'm learning about that currently.
If we took you and we starved you for a week, I'd love to do this. We got to get together sometime and do this. I'm going to starve you for a week, and I'm going to constantly be giving you this droning poetry, right? This poetry that's going to guide, it's going to set up in your mind images, right? Then the day comes, the sacred day comes, and we give you your 80x salvia. And instead of letting you be with your cat, we push you into a cave from the top, where you drop down into the bottom of this cave. And the cave is full of snakes, and it's got no light. But there is you can get out of it. If you follow the stream, you can get out of it. It'll take you 2 or 3 days. Not everybody makes it out, right? Wow. And you'll see.
Are they venomous snakes that will kill you?
Yes, they're venomous snakes.
Wow. Oh my God. And then when you're free, you're like, oh my God, I love life. I don't want to die anymore. You have a new loving for life. You've been reborn out of the snake cave. That's great.
They called this particular oracular experience, they called it the Oracle of Trophonius, right? He is the nourisher. He's the nourisher. And it's an old Demeter title that we have. Anyway, you take Trophonius, the Trophonian Oracle, and they used to make a joke about it. Aristophanes even immortalizes this in one of his plays by saying some guy who's freaked out, right, and in a state of fury and panic, they say, oh, he looks like he's been to the Oracle of Trophonius, right? And it's known that the people that get out, by the way, you see the people that don't get out, their bodies are still in there, right? That's a part of the experience too. Where do you think you get your nourishment from?
The horror. Wow, people eat the dead bodies down. Oh my God.
These are vampires, baby. Jeez, you get to the other side of this cave, and it messes you up so much. They have an expression for it. Looks like you went to the cave of Trophonius. But that experience will wake you up, and you will know what is outside of the visible. That's how they described it. You'll know what's beyond the visible, right? That's why their god, the chief divinity in this whole process, is a dude named Phanes, and that means the one who makes visible. Yeah. Oh God, isn't it genius? Then you take that guy who's really scrambled now, and you have him sit with the priests, and he tells them everything. They would have done the same thing with you, right? God, before we throw you in that pit, though, I'm going to tie you up. I'm going to use the stinging nettles on you, and I'm going to do the alabastrin, and I'm going to beat you. I'm sorry. It's fun. It's fun. Trust me. If you've never beaten somebody who is drugged into a state of erotic hysteria, right? I mean, the dude is standing there with an erection that won't go away. And they say, by the way, the doctors say, you can't let this go on for more than 7 days because you'll kill the person, right? Right. Can you believe the guy that they figured that out on? You know, he's had an erection for 7 days.
Maybe that's why.
Psychosis.
maybe that's why the priest at the Gali of Cibil cut it off.
Yeah.
So that
Cut
they
off.
can go more than 7 days.
Boom. Take
Maybe they
those.
won't die that way because holy crap.
Yeah, it's all chemical, right? It's all
Right.
none of this stuff works unless the science works. And that's why I'm saying the modern groups, the Masons will never figure out. They'll never figure out how to make that oracle. They're just I don't know.
Right.
I don't have a lot of
Right.
confidence.
Well, maybe
I'm
they, I
sorry.
mean, if they do, they're not going to like tell us about it. You know, they're
Yeah.
going to use it for themselves and let us die off and be slaves.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It
so
must be
the application of torture makes the victim more readily accept the words that the priest tells them, their new reality. And that's just like SRA with the children. They torture the kids and then they give them programming, which goes in and it's just readily accepted. They're put into a dissociative state of like just acceptance and and your body reacts that way to this horror because it's saving your consciousness from breakdown, and some people that go too far with the torture end up breaking all the way, become psychopath. And then it's fun for them to do torture to others. They see others in pain and they're like, yay. And then now this priesthood has a place for those people that love to do the torture. And it all fits together. And then the torture and the deviant sex has changed the minds of these priests, and they have integrated it into their worship. And then that is passed on generationally, and it just grows and festers until we have the modern Catholic priesthood of today with the rampant pedophilia, and we have the SRA of the satanic generational cults that are abusing their children to make mind-controlled slaves. And those slaves are being given places in the government where they can follow orders of their instructors who told them the occult words right after they were done torturing them as children.
I got them back though. I had one momentary victory at St. Mary's University. The priests that were there were currently they had some, shall we say, they were caught for doing things that were not good to children. There were some lawsuits going on, and they were trying to keep it on the down low, trying to keep it out of court because as one priest told me, it's expensive. This stuff's expensive. And they expect a priest, when they get caught doing this stuff, expects the defense, right? The church, they're very haughty. I had a Monsignor tell me the people who get caught doing this stuff, they're very haughty about it. They think it's like their right to be able to abuse other people. And there's no aspect of justice. Well, it's because they're atheists. They don't worship justice. They don't worship the gods, right? That's what the Greeks and Romans said about them anyway. But when this was going on, and I was asked to advise on the play The Medea and to write a translation and to bring it to these people. So long story short, we had a chorus of Furies holding that dildo, pointing it at priests in the audience, saying, basically drawing out their judgment, right? That's what the Furies do. They're like the foundation of the Athenian justice system. That's what the Furies are. Aeschylus brought that out. But what do the Furies do? They protect children, right? That's the thing, right? So we were doing that on stage. I got to have these college student, a whole chorus of college student girls point that device at these priests who are actively, suffering from the legal ramifications of what's going on. One of the professors told me at the end of the faculty has to watch these performances too. They take their classes to them. You get some kind of credit. You write a paper about the process of staging a play or something. And one of the professors stood up after a performance, and they invited me out along with the director and the main actress who did a great job. And they asked us out to say comment on the play. And one of the professors stood up and said, you're going to get fired. That was it. You're going to get fired for producing the reality that was acknowledging what's going on around it, that self-awareness. You're going to get fired.
Huh. Not allowed to think for yourself, right?
No, and I had written a book by that point on the church, the abuse, sexual abuse in the early church. So people by that time were already ready to let me go. But I didn't care. I followed the Muse and I was faithful to my sources. That's all I care about. So if you have to talk about licking Templar taint in order to undergo an occult mystery initiation, and when the Pope finds out, you're all dead. You know what I mean? That's history. I'm sorry. There was a great woman, Jules Michelet writes about. He's a French historian, and he writes about this great woman who was caught and put to death. They caught her in her own home in a closet, and she had a broomstick full of this green drug. And she had the drug that was applied to her vagina via the broomstick and her armpits. I don't know why the armpits. Maybe it absorbs in the armpits as well, but it's part of the whole deal. And they said, "What did you do?" And she said, "I had sex with the devil." And they said, "Why would you want to have sex with the devil?" And she said, "It was because he was able to take me places that my husband never could." Huh. I thought that's heroic. That's heroic. It's that same feminine drive that spurred all of this knowledge of drugs that you and I have lost. In a few years, they'll look back on us and they'll say, "God, what primitive medicine these people used." They turned aside from all the natural drugs that are out there, and they started creating their own, and their own drugs kill you. Like you said, you take something for depression now and it makes you want to kill yourself, right? Give me 1 weekend and 7 days of fasting and I'll make you the least depressed person on the planet. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, just some stinging nettles, and
You like that? You want me to hit your genitals? You want me to smack your private parts with stinging nettles like they did in antiquity? Why?
You must misunderstand me. Yeah, but I mean, so like this, do you? So this is, this kind of they apply torture and whatnot to the mother, so that the child has like an epigenetic, is more like, if you starve a mother, her baby will be more apt to become obese, because her genes were formed and created thinking that there's famine outside, and so it prepares the next generation for that environment that the mother was in, and the grandmother. So it's like an epigenetic triggering that they do.
Cool.
Do you think that junk DNA, do you think this is like, are you familiar with junk DNA? Have you heard the term?
Yeah, sure.
Do you think maybe this is all like maybe can be accessed through these types of processes that Medea was doing? Like she was creating with her vagina a sacred cup of healing. I mean, do you think that maybe with the process and creating a baby of many generations of this process, do you think that that potential is already inherent in our DNA and just is waiting to be triggered?
Yeah, totally. And I think they looked at it as, look, the serpent, which we all know is our symbol of medicine, right? The serpent, the healer, right? When Moses is doing the whole serpent thing. And, he's doing the same thing the Egyptians are doing. It's not different magic. It's the same thing. So that serpent is the healer because it produces a substance that heals. And their idea was you can take that concept and apply it to a person, and you can induce them to produce that healing substance. Are they activating those genes? Are they playing with things genetically? Of course they are. Of course they are. How are they looking at it? They're looking at it as, look, this is how nature is. Nature gives certain entities certain powers, right? But we as humans, if we observe those powers in nature, can take those powers to ourselves. That's what magic is. Magic is that manipulation of that nature, and that's why they say it's left-handed, right? That's why they that's why they said
hijacking
about
the natural process and steering it towards the will
Correct.
of the practitioner, of the sorcerer, right?
Correct. You're engineering nature, and that's what people who are into the magic and the mystery, that's what they do.
Right.
They engineer nature. So could we take a mother who is going to give birth, and could we put her on a certain regimen? Could we do certain things to her to whether it's starve or feed, right? Could we do certain things to her to engineer a fetus that can then have its own characteristics that are not what you and I would call normal? We'd say it's contrary to nature, but those characteristics can then be used by our side, the non-manipulated, in order to bring about our enlightening and awakening. That's what they're doing. And long life, because nobody cares if this stuff doesn't actually physically help you, right? If it doesn't actually physically help, it dies out in antiquity. That's how Galen talks about, how do we develop a knowledge of all of these medicines? There's so many different plants and animal products that can be used. How do we develop this? And he says it's because stuff that doesn't work fades out, right? What you and I call the snake oils, that doesn't, if it doesn't work, physicians stop using it.
Snake oil, right? And snake oil, right? So the theriac, right? These people were selling a theriac. That's what snake oil is, right? Why would they call it snake? Right. So that's very interesting. And like we talked about before, the rod is the alabastron, and the snakes of the caduceus is the snake venoms, which is the whole it represents Medea's toolkit, right?
Yeah. When in the Septuagint, when Moses takes his, what we call a staff, we translate it as a staff in Greek, and nobody reads the Greek because we're all under the deception that it's from Hebrew. But in the Greek, it says it's his rabdon, and it uses the word that is the wand of the Bacchants. These Maenads, these crazy Maenadic women who are following Bacchus, they carry that wand, that rabdon around. That's what he's using. And when he says, by the way, people say, when you put the snake on the pole, then you look at it, this is going to cause you to be healed of the snake envenomation.
Just look
right?
at it, right?
There's something really weird, because in the text, in the Greek text, that the word there that's used for rod is a word for a tattoo or a sema. It's a stamp or a seal that you put on somebody. And we know these cults, they're tattooing. It's a big deal, right? Epimenides, one of the greatest philosophers that influenced
like the sign of the beast,
Greek democracy. Yes.
Okay.
He's got tattoos all over him. Jesus, most people don't realize it. Jesus has a tattoo. And his followers have tattoos, right? What does Jesus say in the apocalypse when he shows up on his horse with his bow? What does he say? He's got a tattoo on his thigh. It's the name. It's the glorious name. And anybody who's not of those 166,000, right? Well, who do these people have? They have the mark, the name on their forehead, right? Oh my God, are you kidding? This is lovely. So
they're branded slaves, basically. Right.
Yeah, and
I
in
mean, Crowley
antiquity,
did that. Like,
Mhm.
Crowley branded his women with an iron, like,
there's
burned them. But anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
there's two classes of people who are branded that way in antiquity: slaves and priests.
Right.
Right? How do you know? You know how that person follows that oracular divinity? Because their friggin' name is written on his head. That's how they do it. That's how they do it. So
Wow.
it makes me wonder what, then you get into, because nobody's written a good history of tattooing, right? It makes me wonder, since they're using it in conjunction with medicine and religion, is there something in a tattoo? Is there something in the process of tattooing that goes along with the cult? Is that what it is? Where is it? Is it the pain? Is it the induction of pain?
Right.
Jesus up there being crucified. Oh, loving that pain, right? There's
Yeah.
something in the right. If I'm beating your genitals with stinging nettles while you have an erection, there's something in that act that's bringing out the healing of the Christ. So yeah, there's something in there with all the beating.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's why it's described as the cup of abominations, because like, who would choose that with a sane mind? Who would want that to be done to their body? And why?
Yeah.
Who would want to kiss the taint of their fellow whatever? It's it's
Well, I don't know.
it must take
There's a
years of
lot of
mind
taint
control,
there.
like, to get that to that level. It must take years of
But there's a lot of
indoctrination.
people who aren't involved in rights that are involved in taint stuff. So, is it, I don't know, is it that far off to say this would really bother me if I'm in a clinical environment where the priestess is showing me and manipulating me in a specific way? And this is something that we've done over time. And we look at it and we think, oh my God, this is shocking, because none of us would ever do this, right? Unless you're, I don't know, unless you've got a bunker somewhere and you got the right connections. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're a
unless it's
member of the right
really a
app on
cult.
the. Right. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't do this. We wouldn't do this. But all of the elements of this are in everything else we do, right? It's just an organized and very methodical way of doing what, Elon Musk and all of the billionaires who are making their rockets now. They want to go to Mars and they want to do that. That same spirit of exploration was turned toward quantum reality. And
Right.
that's what the mystery does. It allows you to investigate what is outside of this reflection. And if I have to get there from somebody beating me up, if I'm going to become a Bakken, that's, I'm going to have to put up with that. It's going to induce something in me. I don't know.
If you're going to
I've
join the
never been able
Bloods,
to
you're going to
ask him.
get right. You're going to get beat into the gang. Like, that's part of it, and then when you're a member of the gang, you're going to help beat others so that you too are doing the immorality and you become complicit in that. You become a willing participant in that. And like, the deviation from norm, like, the more it's continued and cultivated, the worse it gets. If you look at psychopathy, and like, I'm learning, I'm been listening to psychologist that talks about psychopathy and SRA and what it does to the mind, like the deviation from normal. And this gentleman, John Euler, everybody should look him up. He's great. He talks about how the relation between pornography and the level of deviation of these people, and it's always related to porn. They always have. So like, there's the sexual nature of it. And then it just goes to more deviant, and some people, they'll get to the barely legal stuff and they'll stop there, but others will continue, those psychopaths, and the porn goes with them. And there's always, somebody out there abusing a kid or raping a dog or whatever, that they can find this video on the dark web, and all of a sudden they're like, whoa, a new level of deviation from normality, and it's more excitement and more. And I'm wondering if, like, the priests that are doing the stinging nettles, are they just crazy? Have they been going down this path of psychopathy, and then now this is the level that they've attained, and they've convinced you, like, oh, this is a good thing, you need this. I mean, maybe it's just integrated into their system, like the deviant sexual psychosis is like folded in to the religion, just like how the Jews, they circumcise their children, like they're mutilating their private parts on purpose, because the psychosis is sunken so deep in all the generations.
It's a part of the culture. The cult became part of the culture. And yeah, same thing with female genital mutilation, right? What does that do psychologically? And at what point do you get to? I mean, even Catholics circumcise, right? So there's a fragment.
Sadly.
There's a fragment of that culture that said, if you enter into these acts, you're going to be able to elevate yourself, that this is a true spiritual experience, right? That's why you put your mouth on it. You know what I mean? And people are like, what?
Yeah.
Right? What? No, don't worry. It's only the priestly caste that can do that, right?
Right.
But you read about early Christian rape of children, and the Romans, again, they're prosecuting this stuff, right? They're rounding up priests who are involved in this activity, right? Who they're more like leaders of covens. They're not priests by that point. They're more like fathers. They're more like the patriarchal administration. But you take those boys off the street, and they will sodomize them. They will starve them, strip them naked, tell them you got to be naked because Jesus was naked, right? And who could refuse that, right? And then you offer them the sacred sodomy after the devil has come and has entered you as the priest, right? You then penetrate that child, but you train that child to turn away from the act itself, to say this is evil. If that child can say this is evil, they're saved for the rest of their life. That's what they say. That's what they say in the training. If you can turn away from the devil who is brought to you by that initiator, you're saved. That's it, because you're rebuking the sin. They called it applying the fires of temptation, right? Fires of temptation.
So, like,
somebody, please, fires of temptation. Give this kid the fires of temptation so his soul can be pure. They did the same thing.
How about if the parents can deny letting the priest do this thing, then the child is saved and has salvation. Like, maybe if the parent can break their own mind control and let the child be in the image that God created him, instead of allowing this demon to, to abuse the kid. And then when the parent, or when the priest sees both parents giving their kid up for sacrifice, then the devil has won, anyway, sorry.
That's why the priest in the early centuries of the church, when the Romans are persecuting this, and it's about the same time that Origen cuts off his balls, that's why the priests that are involved in this are picking orphans. And this is a particular legal stickler.
Right. That way there's no parent to defend them. That's the same way nowadays. Yeah. Wow. Marilyn Monroe was an orphan, and what they did to her. And they killed her with an alabastron full of medicine. Oh, she was rectally, they squirted, like, they said she overdosed on pills, but she had no pills in her belly. It all went into, they gave her an enema with drug, and it killed her, like, in a heartbeat. She was dead. Like, that's how they killed Marilyn Monroe. And in order to cover up that fact, they stole her organs. I mean, this is so, like, the dark occult understands that this is that's a way to apply, and they held her down and raped her with it. But so anyway, the orphans they have no one to protect them. So, like, that's who that's who they choose for their practices, because whatever, I don't have to care about this child. It's just a throwaway child and I can use it.
Yeah. Yeah, the biggest groomer ever, the most successful groomer ever was Jesus. If you think about it, his mathetes, his students, right? They're all teenagers. John is probably about 10 years old because he sits on Jesus's lap all the time. But they're kids, right? And where does he get them? He goes out to get James and John. They're fishing with their father.
Right.
And he's like, come with me. I'll make you fishers of men. Hody tote tote. And what do? They go out and they join him. And the next thing you know, they're on.
What is a fisher of men but a hooker?
Right? When Jesus gets nabbed and he's in during his trial, one of his followers, they say, oh, this one can go in because he knows the guy who's the rabbi here. They go on fishing trips together. And you're like, wait, what? Right? And notice the girl who recognizes Peter. You know the girl who recognizes Peter as being one of the boys of Galilee? Because now they're hunted, right? Now this is an operation. It's a sting operation. Now Peter can't show up at the crucifixion because they'll nab him too. He's part of the organization. And who recognizes them? In the Greek, it says it's a female prostitute. Not only that, it's the word used for underage female prostitute. You know what Peter was doing when he was naked on the boat with the other kids? You know what they were doing out there? Yeah, it's part of the Galilee prostitution. And that's why Jesus is raising his hands saying, I am not a child trafficker. He didn't say, I am not a bad guy. I am not I am not an evil person. I didn't commit any crimes. No, he said, I'm not a trafficker. Why? Because everybody knows what happens to traffickers. We got no patience for them. The Romans didn't either. Julius Caesar had them all killed because maybe that's why one of the people who got kidnapped. Yeah.
Maybe that's why they call today Good Friday, because that's the day that they killed him. Because everybody's like, oh, save the children. I mean, I know that's not, please listeners, don't get mad. I'm just saying, but really, like we're recording this on Easter weekend. Today is Good Friday. And we're talking about this, it's not, I mean, how can it be good that our Savior was killed? Like, so that in a sense is an occult mockery. But if you're looking from the idea of like, he's a lay stace, in my opinion, I think all lay states should be killed. They don't reform themselves. They can't be changed back to like not deviant and not want to rape children. Go ahead.
I was talking with the people that I work with at Lady Babylon, and just people that we're a bunch of nerds that sit around looking at texts all the time. Right. And I was talking to them, and I said there has to be some kind of morality here. What is the very basis of the morality? There's one morality in antiquity, and it comes through this Phrygian mother. You don't mess with that virgin. You don't mess with that vestal. You protect that instrument. And you say, wait a minute, they were using them for X, Y, and Z. Yeah. The philosophy was protect the individual, protect the helpless child. I told people on Lady Babylon, if there's one philosophy that kind of summarizes the core morality of the pre-Christian, pre-Judeo-Christian world, it's the protection of that innocent, the protection of the child. So I totally hear you, but I'm going to challenge you because Jesus, when he was dying on the cross, he did not die from the crucifixion. And they even noted it at the time because it was leg breaking time. You know what I mean? Right. The soldiers were like, it's leg breaking time. Why do you have to break legs when you're crucifying? Because if you can hold yourself up, you don't get asphyxiated. Right. Once you lose the strength to hold yourself up, you're going to strangle yourself. Right. So when
you can't breathe in because your lungs are held like that because your arms are stretched open. Right.
It's excruciating, right? You're basically getting, the state is strangling you to death. Right. And so at the end of it, if everybody, the holdouts, the people who can hold themselves up and not be killed, you go around, you break their legs, right? You just take your big hammer, right? These hammers they brought, by the way, when they arrested Jesus, it's like a heavy weapon. It's like a SWAT unit, right?
It's the Malefice Malicarum. It's
right.
the hammer of the witches, right? Just, yeah.
They brought it for breaking his legs, and the guy looked up, and he's already dead. Why? Because we know they narrated he's sitting there. I'm burning up. I need water. Sabachthon, and he intones the God of the entire mystery, Sabachthon, and what happens? He passes away instantly. He passes away.
So the vinegar didn't help.
Yeah, he didn't get strangled to death on a cross. Whatever that was that he had in his system, it hit him, and he was dead. Something killed him immediately. They even had to poke him, make sure. Is he faking? Maybe he's faking.
Oh, right, with the sword or with the spear of destiny. Right.
Yeah, exactly. He died instantly. Right. He died instantly. If that isn't a case of overdose, because
then his body is stolen. I mean, well, okay, in my opinion, like his body's not there again. And like 3 days later, what are they doing with? He's a high magi. His body has been treated with this way his whole life. They're probably going to utilize his parts for their further rituals later. They're going to take his corpse and like let everybody think, oh yeah, he rose. I mean, I know it sounds blasphemous. I'm sorry, everybody, to listen to Christians.
No, it's historical, because when Mary shows up, Mary Magdalene in Scythian means Maga. They translate it into Maga, which is the female Magus, right?
Right, like the
when
witch.
When she comes to his burial, who's there but some kid? I forget, is he naked or is he, no, this one I think was dressed. But there's a young kid there in the tomb. I tell you what, people would not talk about me well if they were finding me with children all over the place, including my 12 that follow me around. Remember when Jesus has his vampire body? So you're going to be realistic. You're going to say, look, they probably took it and they used it for the flesh and blood. And I think that makes sense. We don't have any evidence for that. Maybe we will someday.
I mean, it makes like, yeah, logically, in my opinion, like I've been looking at the dark occult and looking at the magic and like you were saying, I mean, these fluids and these bodily processes are valuable to them. So it only makes sense, right?
Yes, no, it makes perfect sense. And maybe we'll find someday some apocryphal text will creep up and they'll say, wow, this is what they did. They took his body and they processed it for the rite. The story of his vampire body and the fact that he's able to resurrect, that's the fairy tale that we all follow, right? Because you and I know as scientists, he didn't die and stand up again and walk away. Right. But what's interesting is when he did become a vampire, where was the first place he went? He went back out to the shore where his kiddies were on a boat off the shore, and he yelled out to him. And Peter recognized him and put on his pants and jumped into the water and swam over to Jesus in vampire form. Right. So even if you and I as scientists can say, there's no such thing as vampire bodies, right? And there's no such thing as resurrected saviors, right? They don't exist. We can at least see embedded in the fairy tale of the vampire body is the fact that he's returning to his children, and those children are naked. What is Peter doing with his private parts hanging out? Why does nobody make a picture of this episode of the Bible with naked Peter? Right? What's Jesus doing with naked Peter? Now wait a minute.
There's probably some weirdo snuff porn out there where it's all part of, it's whatever.
Snuff porn. Damn. I thought that was Gaza. I thought that was our snuff porn.
Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Those are dark occultists too, making those people do that. Like it's all sacrifice for the dark Lord of,
Yahweh, baby. Yahweh demands child sacrifice. He even told them. He even told him, you take those little kitties. This is a quote by Yahoo, by Jehovah, right? You take those little kitties by the ankles and you smash their heads on the ground. That's a lot cheaper than bombs or starving them to death, right? But that's Yahoo. That's the child sacrifice.
Dashed
He
on the
feeds on
rocks.
child sacrifice. You didn't think it was odd that he asked Isaac? He wanted give me that boy. Give me.
Right.
Oh.
And then later, oh no, just take the foreskin of, instead of the firstborn male on the 8th day, now you just mutilate him on the 8th day. All the boys, like, okay, great, substitute. We're, their sacrificial religion has modernized to now we don't actually kill the baby, we just mutilate his sexual reproductive organs. Like, it's the same. The God will love it either way. It's the same amount of pain and torture, and those non-corporeal entities can feed on that negative energy, as that kid is emanating out from his little mutilated body. Like, whoa.
It's what makes Jehovah.
Right.
And
that's who the Canaanites were. That's the Baal of the Canaanites was Jehovah. And the Moloch was just the fires that they were throwing the babies in after they smashed them on the rocks. Like,
yeah, man, those guys, those prophets, they got control of the fire of Uranus, right? They can do that kind of stuff. Elijah's doing that stuff too. People are shocked, like Elijah, the prophets call up bears. I forget if it was Elijah or Elijah, but the bears eat the kids, right? It's not foreign to us that God sacrifices children. You think the Christians would have figured that out. Jesus Christ, Son of God, ends up a sacrifice, right? How is that any different than taking a group, an ethnic group, putting them into a cage and murdering them all, whether you're starving them or burning them in a furnace? It doesn't matter. Or bombing them. It doesn't matter. Right now, they're eating. There's children, hundreds of thousands being fed animal matter in order, food for animals, right? It's not, it's not going to give them any nutrition, right? They're being fed that. They're on their way to dying. Why? Jehovah wants it. There's a guy in Texas who's been sending red heifers to try to get the conservative Orthodox population to sacrifice them and tear down the Dome of the Rock, right? Why? Because then Jesus can come back. Don't you realize we need Jesus to come back and slaughter everybody? Right? If you don't think this is, our religions are directly the descendants of this horrendous act, you need to wake up and watch the child sacrifice. It's taking place right now. They're all dying right now, and you and I, Sean, are paying for it. Yeah, you and I are paying for it. I don't know. Are you American, Sean?
Yeah. I mean, sadly, I live in this country, but I don't vote for whatever they're doing. That's for damn sure. And I've learned from people that used to, like, Mark Passio. I've worked with him and talked with him a lot, and he talks about how the people that are doing the dark occult sacrifice, well, they're at least the ones that he was wearing robes with, they call it the old religion, and it's like so ancient. It's pre-Catholic, Judaism, and it is the same. It's like a worship of involution and decay, and that the opposite of life, and it takes the life of a child and it's turning it into decay through their actions to, as their sacrifice to their dark lord. It doesn't matter what the name is. It's still that evil, in its essence, in its core. And if you learn about psychopathy and how people fall into the evil, the separation of morality from their self, and their and when they when they think of themselves as better than others, and their ego becomes huge enough so that they can harm others, and then it's fun for them to harm others, and they become this psychopath character. That it seems like psychopathy is the ruling force, and it has arranged itself through time to make us slaves. And this knowledge of how we like the knowledge of ourselves, and how we can heal, and how we connect to the other world, the outer world around us, that is occulted to keep us in a slavery state. Just like the years of understanding mind control, this, by putting people through torture, we become more docile and more subservient. I think that this might be, in my opinion, from what it looks like, it is the enshrinement of a psychopathy. Even though Medea like wants to protect the child, it seems like it's coming from that same source within a person that creates the psychopath. That is, like, we have two wolves inside, right? And we feed one, and the other disappears, right? And it seems like these priests have been feeding the evil wolf for generations, and this might be what has resulted over the years. Like,
it's the same machinery, it's the same physics,
right?
Whether you call it psychology or physics, it's the same mechanism that you're arriving, and you can use it for the benefit, for the healing, right? So that people build you temples, and you're honored, or you can use it for the direction of switching the pole to that Bacchic tearing apart of the victim and consumption of the victim. I have friends in Israel. I for over a year, and you have to make friends. If you're with people for a year, you got to make friends, right? And I did. Almost all of them, with a couple of exceptions, almost all of them were completely secular, and told me on a regular basis how much they hated the religious extremism.
Right.
They hated it. And I was like, you mean you don't read the Bible? And they would laugh at me. They would laugh at me. They'd be like, no, we want democracy. That's what they were all talking about. Now, you've got this population of people that currently is being led by religious extremists, and their religious extremist leader, Netanyahu, who worships Yahoo. Right. And he's telling his religious extremists in the military, he's telling them, you can follow Amalek. This was very famous. Right? And what is the admonition of Amalek? It's kill all of your enemies, including the women and the children.
Dash the babies' heads on the rocks.
I know for a fact that my friends that I respected and admired, I know for a fact they don't support that. But that one group can use that psychology to stop and repress that good instinct. And look, the same people who, back a century ago were being genocided, they're doing the same thing. I got news for you. All of my Israeli friends know this. The Gaza is no different, right? Gaza is no different than any of the death camps in Germany. It's no different. The outcome's the same. You're killing everyone.
Right. It's ironic. It's ironic that the people who were the victims are now, but then if you look further into it, the people who were the actual victims of that, the Eastern Europe, like, they were just the cannon fodder. The real people were the dark occult magicians in the club. You know what I mean? And it's a worldwide club. It's the old religion. They just wear the costume of, oh, they're a Jew, or, oh, that one's a Christian. Like, they all are inside. They have allegiance to this involution and this decay, and
Yahoo loves death, baby.
Right.
If you want to join a death cult, join Yahoo. And I don't care if you're celebrating as somebody who takes Saturday off and all that Shabbat Shalom and all that, or if you're somebody who sits in a church and takes a wafer and does it. You're still worshiping the very same death entity. Right? The Olympians look at that type of divinity and they're like, no. Right? The Romans evocate. They call, like we were talking about, they call a god to them. They did it with the Great Mother. They didn't import Yahoo. Import Yahoo. Why not? Because they saw Yahoo's one of those friggin' death gods. Right? One of those death gods. Oh my God, how uncivilized, right? Now
totally.
You and
I mean, just the mutilating their penises, like a Christian, like a regular Roman Christian, if he circumcised himself, they would put him on the cross. They would crucify him because that is so against nature to do so.
Galen was a surgeon, right? And what does he talk about? He talks about repairing circumcision.
Oh, wow.
Right? Because a lot of people want it fixed.
Right. Me too. Right? God, it's like impossible. How do I get the nerve endings again? Like, but anyway.
He talks about too, you can cut down on the skin and pull it up and stretch it up. Yeah. I don't know how well that works.
There's modern ways of just pulling and it grows that way. You don't have to cut, but still, anyway, there are repair people. I mean, most of it's a very tiny piece of flesh and it's easy to fuck it up. You know what I mean? Like it's just one little cut wrong way and and the kid dies, you know? But anyway, we don't need to get into that, but still like the idea of it, it takes a psychopath to go and cut a little baby's, use a dirty thumbnail and separate the foreskin from the glands and then cut it off and then suck the blood, the pain infused blood from the victim, you know, and all the other people who have endured that pain, they all dissociate and allow this monster to victimize their baby. It's a very deep mind control. And, you know, so all of the years of the old religion using children for this technology, you know, they've separated out the morality. I mean, I get, but still, what you said is should be mentioned again, that it is just a technology, and the way that they use it is whether it's good or bad. And like Medea wanted to heal people and turned the world towards a good, and they made temples, like reverence to it, where other sects of evil used for torture and feeding, I guess, cannibalism and blood drinking and all the rest. Like,
you can always tell from the product that machine produces. When you produce thankers, there's a great verse in, I think it's Deuteronomy, that says, I'm going to cut off your people who are performing these rites on the high places. I'm going to cut off these people who are doing the mantic or oracular rites. And I'm going to cut off all of those smartasses, right? It's people who debate and talk about philosophy. What Medea did was set the foundation, an oracular foundation for the people that you and I call the pre-Socratics. They would have never evolved without what she laid down. Hospital systems would have never evolved. Pharmacology would have never evolved. It was her laying down of that foundation that produced those people that Yahoo in the Torah says, you've got to dispose of these people. We don't want people sitting around debating things, right? Right.
Because that challenges the order of power, right? I mean, look at with the American Revolution, these are people in, like, you know, ale houses, and they're reading pamphlets from Samuel Adams and, you know, Thomas Paine, and they get a fire lit in their brain to go be free from the tyrant that's oppressing them. I mean, that is the worst fear of the oppressors, is for the regular people to have the power to say no and do it their own way. I mean,
They
do you
called it
agree?
adamantine freedom. That's what the Greeks call it, adamantine freedom. And they said it only comes through the right. So when Cicero stands up, having been to Eleusis, and says, look, being born again is very important, and you have to understand what this does to you, right? And how it gives you a perspective. Right on the Temple of Apollo, it says, as you're entering, it says, know yourself, right? It doesn't say know the creed. It doesn't say act a certain way. It doesn't say don't look at your neighbor's wife. That sexy is bad. It doesn't say that. It says know yourself. And this same system, that Temple of Apollo, is the origin, the seed of hospitals, right? The very place of hospitals. So you can use the technology to create slaughter, or you can use it to heal. And I think they very well recognize that in antiquity, because remember, Apollo is the one who both kills and revives. He's the one who kills and brings back to life. And it's his own son is the one who was brought back to life, right? Talk about vampire bodies, right? So the technology is there. And I think if we as a civilization go through a renaissance and are able to harness scientifically that power, whether it's for our psyches, you don't know, but somebody told me, and you can look it up, just verify this online. I wouldn't tell you some garbage. Somebody told me that doing PET scans on the human brain, positron emission tomography, doing those scans while somebody is under the influence of drugs, surprise, surprise, you get different areas of the brain that will light up.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
If there's something in the process that you can take a human being and expose them to certain natural chemicals and cause that human being to be more active in certain ways in their brain, how is that not beneficial? Maybe that's why we have such high mental illness rates, because we are not interacting with those chemicals. Oh God, it's, the potential.
Right.
The health potential is there. I say we harvest it. We stop supporting the people who are killing children. How about that? Why don't we just set morality and say, hey, we're not going to support. You can't go and you can't send rockets into maternity wards. You can't put people into a pen and starve them to death. You can't do that kind of stuff anymore. That's the kind of stuff that Thomas Jefferson, you mentioned the founders, Thomas Jefferson, who's with his wine and women, right? He's the one who's saying, hey, I can write ancient Greek. Where do you think he's getting all of his ancient thoughts from? Where do you think that democracy is coming? You don't think it's because democracy is a Greek word, do you? Yeah, it is. There's an enlightenment that is
Demos.
in those sources. Yeah.
Right.
And that's caused democracy. Now, the Christians will tell you today, the evangelicals will tell you, no, we're burning that history and we're going to rewrite it. And democracy is actually Christian. If you have studied 5 minutes of any human history, any Western human history, you will know for a fact Christianity is the sworn enemy of democracy. How do I know? The proof is every time 30% of these Christians will create a theocratic government, a leader who is willing to pander, just like that douche Constantine, who's willing to pander to their 30% to be able to overthrow any sort of democratic government. It happens all the time. All the time. It's a cycle. And if they can establish that control for good, they have to burn the books to start with. You can't have access to any of this classical knowledge, right? Because that's dangerous, right? They don't want you reading the Bible, right? Because that's control that they lose. Once you read it, you're going to see that there's a naked kid with Jesus Christ when he's arrested in a public park screaming, I'm not a child trafficker. And that's Mark 14, 51 and 52. Right? Read it, man. Read it. It's actually there. I'm not here to sell you. By the way, has everybody noticed you and I are not selling? We're not selling. I got no hat.
No.
I don't want your audience to buy hats. I don't want them to buy my t-shirts. I don't want any money from them. I want them to get off their asses and go to the Bible and start being good biblical scholars and look at the disgusting actions of the world's most famous pedophile. Yeah, that's
It's
what we
like
need to do.
it's a mockery that they made us worship. I mean, and I'm so used to the occult mockery that we've been living under. Like, there's so many layers of, the kids pledging allegiance to a flag, and this flag is a bunch of, opium war gangsters, and it's like, like the more we peel away, the more we can find our own individual freedom and recognize that the power we have in our bodies, like our sacred vessel, sex with our wife to make babies is creative magic. And the death cult wants to kill all the babies. I mean, if we're going to fight this involution, I think we need to create unharmed, pure children that can grow healthy in a natural environment. Here, this nature created by the benevolent creator force, which creates things, the opposite of the decaying death. If we can align ourselves with that, we can work with the magic of creation to make families and have a core center to our morality to protect those families.
Totally.
I think
Totally.
it's available.
Totally. The Israeli government, if they had done what the Romans did, they wouldn't be killing the people of Gaza now. If
Right.
they had imported the mother divinity, this could never happen, right? This could never. Think about it. Your standard is a mother, right? Well, how are you going to act if you worship a mother? We don't worship a mother. We worship Yahoo, who kicked out his wife, right? We worship Yahoo, who screwed up a garden. He couldn't even make a garden work, right? We worship the guy who wants the child sacrifice, right? What if in Yahoo's place they imported to Jerusalem and put on the Temple Mount the worship of the Great Mother? Right? Do you think they would be rounding up those Gaza children from Gaza? You think they'd be hoarding? They'd be pushing them into a position where they can starve and bomb them all to death? No, they wouldn't, because the Great Mother wouldn't let you do that.
Right.
But the Great Mother is not a part of Yahoo's world. Right? There is no Great Mother. Isn't that sad? There's no Great Mother in Judaism or Christianity. There's no Great Mother. Right? And some of the Christians will say, oh, the Mother Mary, what did she do? Oh, bullshit. Right? No, nothing even close.
Right. Mother Mary
is nothing even close.
Mother Mary wears the costume. Yeah. She wears the costume of Magna Mater. She has the cloak of the night sky, and she has the waters at her feet. She's stepping on the moon. Right. Like all of those are all elements of the ancient iconography of Inanna, Ishtar, Cibil. Right. And in her Vesica Pisces, her head is the clitoris, and the Vesica Pisces that she's always shown is the vulva, the vagina. I mean, even that, like, that's the power she has. The burning purple is there inside, and her brain is there where the clitoris is. Right.
Yeah, it's already there culturally, but the proof is in the pudding, right? They can stand around. You can be a worshiper of Mary now. Right. And you can stand around with a sign that says save the children. And you can pack a Supreme Court with enough useful idiots to be able to save the children from the abortions. At the same time, you can foam at the mouth because Jesus is coming back once they kill all these Palestinians and destroy the temple. That's not the Great Mother. The proof is in the pudding. You people have looked aside for a century now as the Catholic Church actively rapes people. How many people have they come up with in France and Western Europe? It's in Ireland. It's like 130,000 in the 20th century. They even said the nuns were raping them with crosses. I thought that was something they just did in The Exorcist, bro. I didn't know it was something active. Like,
of course.
Good God. And everybody can look over. I'm so tired of talking to Catholics. Oh God, there's not, they say that it's just a few priests who are molesting children. Really?
Wow. Dude. It's just no morality inside my heart, which makes me say that. That's all. Like, geez.
Save the children. You've got a sign that says save the children, and your priest is anally sodomizing your nephew. What are you doing with this religion of death? And we're all going to march in, sit in our chair, take our bread and blood, right? We're all going to go out. We're the good people. And by the way, here's the money for the bombs that are going to kill somebody, right? Not just, and I'm not talking, look, the ancients worshipped Athena, man. Athena produced democracy, and she is a warrior goddess. And I can tell you something.
Shaking her spear, right? Yeah. Shakespeare, right?
Yeah, shaking her spear. Oh, did you bring up Bill? Did you?
But I'm talking about like the Francis Bacon, not old Bill there. Yeah, like but he's revering Athena in. Like Francis Bacon creating the Shakespeare mythology to create the new language, to put people in the new framing of the English language, to get them in that new setting of mind control with these priests, like these actors on stage anyway. And so like it's creating the new scientific method, and it's as if Francis Bacon is taking the old world version of the Athena religion and modernizing it for British control of the minds of their subjects, like taking the old control system and making a new one with this Shakespeare, like it's giving it the same connecting it to Athena directly. Sorry, it's kind of, but
no, you're right in the night of midsummer. I totally hear you. And I love it. There's a whole element. It's when you rediscover the brilliance of antiquity, and remember, these people calculated the wobble of the earth. So those of us who are sitting around saying they didn't know, America, they didn't know that the world was round even back then, right? They didn't know that at all. Dude, they were calculating. They were using calculus. Did you know they're using calculus? And our modern mathematicians, I had one call me and say, you can't use calculus. I pulled a book off the shelf and I showed him, right? Just opened to a random page and showed him integrals, right? No. Whenever there is a resurfacing of this knowledge, right? Whenever Athena, who is the master of all arts, whenever she is able to sing, society goes forward. Right now we're slipping into that dark ages again. And it's so exciting though. I love the fact that this year is going to be so impactful. People in the future, just wait until you get there. People in the future are like, holy mackerel, I wish I'd lived in 2024. I wish I'd have been an American in 2024.
Look at the revealings that are going on. Like, the King of England has got cancer, and like his daughter, whatever, is like missing, and they're all of the people, like the P. Diddy revelations of child trafficking, and the Epstein revelations happened before, and it's all like we're all digging further into this knowledge and exposing it with our morality, saying this is wrong, everybody. And all the the power controllers are scrambling, trying to, let's do war over here, distract them with this over here, and it's all crumbling, I think. It's slowly happening, and it's the more sometimes I can convince myself that it's not happening and I get depressed, but I do believe that we are evolving as a collective with morality. A lot of people might argue this, but I think that the core of our human essence is moral, And that's why they painted up Jesus as a moral character, to attract more people to the story, because it's natural for us to care for our children and to not mutilate them. you know so that I believe that we are returning to our natural state. It's slowly, like even as circumcision as an example, like we're just now, after all the years of indoctrination and generations of America doing it to its kids, now we're at about 50-50 as the whole country. Like there's more people in New England doing it than in the Southwest or whatever, but it's slowly changing. And the obvious truth that it's not necessary and that it's harmful is percolating into the heads of the mothers, and they're choosing with their own will to not to go with their heart and their motherly instinct. And I think that the rudder of society is slowly shifting. I think that the dark occultists are losing their control over us, and maybe it's the stars, the influence of the, that's why they tracked the wobble, because of the astrology and the forces that are beaming down to us from the stars. Like who could say from their perspective?
Yeah, right through that dark star, man. You bring that.
Right.
That's why I think that the only thing that can save America at this point is the importation of the worship of the Great Mother. Because when your society understands, okay, we all love, what do we all love? We all love a good mother.
Yeah, we love our mother. It's natural, right?
Right. There's a power in that mothering. You watch the bears in nature and how they take care of their young, and you look at your neighbors next door and he's got his little kids. I was a single father with 2 little kids. That's all I did when they were young, is make sure that they were alive and safe and happy. That's all you have to do. And I'm not a natural mother, but I was put in the position of one, and I can appreciate. I could go to a temple today that was dedicated to the Great Mother, and I could, in all good conscience, I could give them some incense to burn. You know what I mean? I could give them something that, hey, here's my fruit that I just picked from my tree. Enjoy, people, right? I could do something good, but when you don't have the Great Mother present in a culture, you get murderers. For some reason, you get murdering, conquering, and tyranny.
Right.
Tyranny. It's like, do we deserve what's coming? You're positive. I tend to be, I'll balance you out.
Right.
I'll balance you out with the negative. I can bet you. Let's make a bet, right? We won't bet money, because the devil hates when people are greedy, right? He hates greed more than anything. You can see that in the medieval accounts.
Oh, like what he did to Judas, right? Out of the 30 pieces.
Right. Exactly. The devil knows that you can throw money out, and anybody that goes for it, those are not the people that you want in your society. Right. The greed is bad. You don't get anywhere with the greed. Right. And so we could import this mother and re-inject into our society the official state appreciation of the Great Mother. And we would know that our military, they don't do these things that other militaries do, right? We are there. Our people are there to bring freedom to the world. Isn't that what America was all about? Isn't that what America was trying to do in the world? We could
imagine if every soldier in his own heart knew to not shoot a woman or a child, no matter what people tell you in your ear, your orders. I won't do that. No, that heals the world, right? That's perfect. Wow. Because if we can recognize, like, I love my mother, and that through the scope of my rifle is someone else's mother, I'm not going to shoot that person.
Exactly.
Perfect right there. Wow. And that goes to show, like, that's exactly what, like, what Medea was doing was a positive, healing our bodies and our minds. And the same, like the other sorcerers can hijack that, and they can use it for negative, but still, like, it's just a technology, and we should learn more about it to understand it fully. Right.
Look what they made with that technology. They made a religion where I go in and I watch this guy get crucified, and he's all like, "Hey, right?" And I think that from this death, I'm going to be pardoned from any shit that I've ever done.
Crazy.
Right? It's a complete death religion, and it's funny because the evangelicals will speak out what they're guilty of. And when they'll say, "You're just worshiping a death god. You're following a death religion." Yeah, how about your guy who's publicly executed that you hang from all your churches and you wear your little cross? You know where that cross? All Satanists in the Middle Ages are spitting on crosses. Why do they spit on cross?
The Knights Templar did. Right.
It's an old mechanism. Exactly. It's an old mechanism of purging. That spitting is a mechanism of purging. And that symbol of a cross is the symbol of torture and execution. You worship, instead of having a statue of the Great Mother. And let me tell you something. These statues of the Great Mother from antiquity, they're sexy statues. You know what I mean? It's gorgeous and it's beautiful and it's inspiring. And when I go and sit in front of that, I absorb the image that is inspiring into my brain. When I go and sit with a bunch of people in nuns' habits and I look at this dude who's being tortured and crucified, and I feel guilty. I feel guilty, and I want this sin to be purged from my mind. You are training. You're just using the same machinery that the mysteries are using, but you're turning it to the other pole, and you're making somebody who is in that state of complete subjection. It's complete control and subjection. And then you tell them your heaven is going to be you and the pedophile with all of his young kids. You get to, guess what? I don't want to go there. I want to go see, I want to go to the Great Mother, man. I don't want to go. I don't want to go to, death
back
cult,
where we
Central.
came from. Like, we were created through a creation process. Why would we align ourselves with the opposite? Like, it's a mind virus. These people, they've done the stepwise progression into that psychopathy.
Mind virus. That's the most brilliant phrase I've heard. Mind virus. That's exactly the way to describe it. Yeah, love it.
Right. Well, thank you so much. I've had you now for 3 hours, and I am so thankful for your time. And you blessed us with all these ideas to think about, and I look forward to the next one. Hopefully we can organize another one in another couple months.
Let's let your audience decide if they want me back. If they want me back, they can say it. But I can tell you this, Sean, that was the quickest 3 hours I've ever done. Ever. Wow, this is lovely. Thank you so much for the invite today.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure, and thank you for joining us. And people need to check out your other works. You have a website and you have some literature that you've written. Tell us about that and where they can find it. I actually, on our last show, I gave a download for your Chemical Muse. You told us not to pay for it. So I found it on LibGen, and everybody can download the PDF for free. So that's spreading the knowledge and the words. So, but please tell us about where we can find you online.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that, by the way. And Macmillan Press, don't pay attention, right? But yeah, I'm the one who gave permission to let the book out, because I don't need to make money off of it. I'm already poor and happy. So why would I do something like that?
God bless you. Thank you.
I'm providing for people. Lady Babylon. I'm not monetizing on purpose, so that I don't have to sell soap and you don't have to have interrupted sessions. What I do is I bring to a bunch of total nerds. You can go to Lady Babylon on YouTube and go to my lives. And I do a live every week. I was doing 2 for a while for 7 seasons. And people, all I do is I bring these texts. I actually show you the text on the screen and I translate it. And it's the most juicy, lovely stuff you've ever seen. It's the stuff that I knew I was supposed to find when the head of the Department of Classics at the University of Wisconsin told me the Romans just wouldn't do such a thing. right? It was then that I said, oh, okay, I got to find everything they wouldn't do, and I got to show people what they wouldn't do, and that's what I'm
Right.
doing. And it's people like it. A bunch of nerds, we call ourselves a satanic congregation, and that runs off all the boneheads, right? We still get a lot of Christians who
People
want to
attacking,
tell me
maybe.
that I'm going to hell and stuff like that, and
Right.
I'm probably some evil overlord or something
Well,
like that.
you
Yeah,
are challenging their worldview, and that challenges their ego itself. So it only makes sense that they would react in that way. I forgive people like that when they, and hopefully they'll come to a better understanding. So it's great that you're giving it to everybody. It's for free and it's for everybody. And those who can't take the comment, it's a satanic whatever. Like you're against the dominator of the minds that is the Catholic Church, and like that in itself, the Satan is the opposer, right? That's all
yeah,
you're doing,
yeah.
really. It's just it's just wordplay, really. I mean, like you were telling me earlier, you want people to return to morality, and how satanic is that of a statement, really? I mean, you're not a
Yeah.
Satanist at all. It's
I
silly.
I made a deal. When I found out that Muse was the daughter of the devil. I made a deal, right? In order, that's really what we worship. The people who are interested in Lady Babylon and who get caught up in it, and they write me back, wow, it's this and that. And yeah, right. Those people, we are all devotees of the Muse, right?
Right.
She's the one who sings. That museum is everything. Pythagoras said when a group of people were going to lay down a colony in Africa, I think it was Africa, and they asked Pythagoras, "What do you recommend we do?" And he said, "You need to build a temple to the Muse." That will drive your society. When we as Americans look at Lady Liberty or Lady Justice, our republic, that's our Muse. And
Right.
I just
What
want to stay
was
faithful to her.
Columbia, right? The
In
Statue
some
of Liberty.
cases, yeah.
The Statue of Liberty has the crown of Attis, and that relates to Cibil, and she's pregnant too. So I mean, that like I've heard from people that were generationally abused, like generational, born in families of generational Satanism, where his mother, Jay Parker, by the way, his mother says to him, "That's Semiramis. That's not the Statue of Liberty. It's Semiramis," and that's who Semiramis is the embodiment of Ishtar,
Yeah.
and Ishtar is the same Lady Babylon, right?
Yeah. She is that queen of Babylon. And if you
Right.
read Lucian's De Assyria, you'll see that she's the Medea. She's the Medwa.
Right.
It's the very same picture. And that's who we worship somebody asked me, are you religious? And I told them, not in the least, right?
Right.
I just follow the Muse. I just follow the Muse. And wherever she goes, and it's because, they have a real appreciation. In antiquity, the Greeks, at least, had a real appreciation for the fact that there is a universal muse and she sings reality. How
Right.
beautiful is that? How beautiful is that? She's
It's like
reason, she's art, she's all of that. She's Sophia, she's that wisdom.
she's our mother. Like she birthed us into creation, right? I mean, we've all have that connection to that feminine, like we all love that. And wow.
Well,
So
thank you for
okay,
having me.
man, thank you. So they can find you, Lady Babylon, at Lady Babylon 666 on YouTube,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they can find your works on Amazon if they choose. But let's see here.
They're too expensive. They're too
Right.
expensive.
So if people go to libgen.rs and they look up DCA Hillman, they can find your works here, The Chemical Muse, and let's see what else. Oh, they only have The Chemical Muse. I was able to find one of your other books in a different place. But I mean, it's kind of tough. We can track them down. I haven't been able to find a PDF of the one about the transvestites. I forget the name. What's the name of that book?
Yeah, gynomorphs. Here, I'll pull it off the shelf. I forget sometimes.
Gynomorphs, right.
Yeah, gynomorphs and Jesus. Here it is. Look, I've got a hermaphrodites, gynomorphs, and Jesus. So,
right.
And God, this thing met so much resistance. My editor is a Pulitzer Prize winner, and I loved working with this gentleman. There's a lot of resistance. You surprised how much people don't want to hear about a feminized form of Jesus, or they don't want to hear about a savior that is a hermaphrodite. Right. I mean, it really scares them. That kind of thing. Hermaphroditism scares people. I don't know why, but the whole gender.
Well, it's the other, like us and them. That's difference, and anything different is scary. I mean, it's natural. I don't know, because if we don't understand something, then we view it as scary, a lot of times.
Right. And the person who brings you the knowledge is crazy, right? The person is obviously crazy. I can't tell you how many people come up to me and tell me, oh my God, I actually read your source and it says exactly what you said it does. Right. It's amazing. I've got no ideas, people. If you go to Lady Babylon and you start watching the lives, it's going to catch you up. They're addictive. I don't give any ideas. All I do is flash up sources and tell you the crazy stuff that they were talking about doing. That's all I do. And that real history is more interesting than anything you and I can make up. It's way more interesting than anything that I want to sell you. I watch modern YouTube shows on mystery religions, and they're absolutely laughable. They're laughably bad.
Yeah, it's such it's a farce.
Terrible. Yeah, it is a farce. And it's a money-making farce. That's what's so disgusting. I will never monetize Lady Babylon. You cannot give me a super chat. You cannot give me any money. I want you to have the text. That's all. Because the emails that I get from people that are like, holy mackerel, I never knew that this stuff existed. I want to thank you. You've revived my interest. You've caused me to be able to see that there's a world that I don't even know, and it makes me wonder about the one that's pulled over my eyes. Yeah, love it. I absolutely love it. So, hail Satan. I'll say that for sure.
God bless you, Ammon. Thank you for bringing us this information. And, I had to reply with that. It's great. It's a wonderful juxtaposition, right? But this is like infinitely fun for me and informative, and you're feeding all parts of my brain with this conversation, and myself and the viewers, we all thank you so much. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sean. Thank your audience. Love the orgy. It was awesome. Great. Hail Satan.
Cheers. Thank you again, listeners, and we will see you next time.